I better have. You're better side.
I'm tired after this. It didn't just happen today. I've had it since Saturday.
I said I feel isolated right now.
He said he was going to be here. Right.
How you doing, Phil?
Good. Here.
Liking this January weather so far?
Keep playing, man. That's.
I mean, we had a few cold days, but that's what you expected. So this is something.
This is great.
Order the committee of the whole meeting for Tuesday, January 28th.
First item on our agenda this evening is roll call.
Barraza. Here. Lancy.
Here.
Beck. Here. Pieper. Here. Malone.
Here.
Sofa.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Barron. Here. Lehman. Here. Ayazi.
Here.
Malay.
Here.
Ewer.
Here.
Saron.
Here.
Vogelsinger. That's 13.
And a reminder to anybody that comes up to speak tonight, just make sure that you use the microphone, make sure you can see the little green light on, and that you can hear yourself in the background so that it gets broadcast well. Item number 3 is approval of minutes for January 14th, 2025. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Selfa, second by Lehman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, record reflect Alderman Vogelsinger is here. So we have 14 now. All right, does anybody have any items to be removed, added, or changed for this evening? Nothing? Okay. And item 5 is matters from the public for anything that's not on our agenda for tonight. So if there's anybody that has anything not on the agenda, come on up and use the microphone. All we need is your name for the record.
Brian Sanchi. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I've been a 32-year resident on the west side of Batavia in the 3rd Ward. I come here tonight to get a one-off exception for the smart meters on our house. My wife's is affected with MS. I have a blood disorder that is exacerbated by the meters. My white blood cells counts have increased. My platelets have decreased. My wife was on a sabbatical through August, and when she came home, she felt worse off than when she was down south. Her leg was acting up. She's getting headaches. Just didn't feel well. And she asked me, "What were you doing? What did you do to the house?" I said, "Well, I had a new water meter installed." She said, "Where was it?" And I says, "Down in the basement." And she says, "That's a smart meter. It's emitting these frequencies that are bad for her health and really for mine." I had sent to the electric department in March 27th of 2014 this letter from her doctor, which states that she has to avoid getting the installation of smart meters at our house. So I'm hoping the council will approve getting the smart meters removed and getting some older devices that we've used in the past reinstalled. And the cost, I'm willing to work with the city of Batavia on costs to get this done.
I guess I'd have to find out from our department what that would entail. Is that a possibility, or is that something that we've ever heard of? The first time I've ever heard of this.
There's 2 meters. There'll be a water meter and an electric meter. So the water meter, the physical water meter, is still an analog meter. I mean, it still has the dial essentially. It's still a mechanical meter that spins with the water flow. The water meter then communicates via our transmitting device when the meter is read. That enables us to remotely read the meter and not have to physically go into someone's home to read the meter. The reading device only activates when we ping it. So it sits there asleep. It's not emitting any radio waves for 29.99 days out of the year. It literally activates. It takes about 2 seconds, the cycle time. So as it receives the ping from our device, it wakes up It sends the meter reading to our device, and then goes back to sleep. It's one reason why the battery on that lasts 20 to 30 years, because it really is never active, just sits dormant. So that's the water meter side. The electric meter side is active all the time because it's hardwired into the electric system. And that one sits on the outside of the house, of course. The manufacturers, there isn't a dumb meter option available anymore for electric meters. They don't physically make them anymore. It's the year 2025. For water meters, you would have to disconnect the reading device and then just have the meter, which we have in there. But that would require the city to go physically to the residence every month and enter the residence and take a physical reading in order to do that. And that would be not authorized by ordinance, so this would have to be a change to the ordinance, and council would have to enact a new fee to account for all the staff time to drive there, manually take the reading, arrange for the appointment every month, go into the basement, get the reading, manually enter the reading. And it's not just as simple as showing up and knocking on the door and hoping someone's home, because that burden to arrange the appointment would not fall to the city.
And I would imagine that seconds or whatever, that's enabled, that wouldn't be anything even comparable to what a cell phone would give off or Wi-Fi in a house.
Now you're beyond my
right, and that's I don't know the answers to those. That's why I'm asking that. So that's something that I think we'd have to find out. What could possibly be causing anything.
But some of the things these smart meters can do to a human being, it's hormone disruption, DNA damage, blood-brain barrier problems, it's sleep disorders, learning difficulties, hyperactivity disorders. I mean, the list goes on and on. And it includes leukemia as well.
And just one last point of clarity for city council. Like our water metering system or our electric system, we don't physically drive to 10 feet in front of each house and pick up the meter reading. We literally can get the entire town with like 4 to 5 locations. So these meters put out signals that go that large of an area, so that we only have to go 4 or 5 places in town to get the entire town. My point of bringing that up is that even if there are not smart meters on this physical home, the home still sits within range of probably literally hundreds of smart meters, because they're all broadcasting signals. And so you can eliminate the smart meters on this home, but it's not going to eliminate the smart meter signals, which are coming literally from his neighbors 15 feet.
That was going to be one of my questions about Wi-Fi and everything else, because I know, you take your phone out and ID it, and there's 6 or 7 of them within range of my house. So I know that those signals are all out there.
Yeah.
And if this is a similar signal, it would be next to impossible to try to eliminate that. 1 meter would not do that, would not eliminate that.
So I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Sochi a little bit ago, and thank you for giving me a call. And, I think, from where I'm sitting, I don't know. I don't know much about radio waves. I don't know much about what's going on. It does seem like we are awash with them. But I think what I've heard is that something like this might make him more comfortable in his home. And I'm hearing Gary share that it might be something we could look into, not making any promises at all, though, of course. What I think I'm hearing on this is that anything that we did, though, would take time and money to the customer, right? And if we have sort of a homeowner who will feel more comfortable in their home and is willing to pay that cost, maybe we should look into it. I think I just want to sort of pull us back a little bit from sort of, becoming radio wave experts or whatnot, and just say that here we have a resident who wants to be more comfortable in his home. Maybe we could do a little digging into it, right? See what an ordinance might look like. Is it even possible? Gary did share that electric meters maybe don't come in analog anymore, right? That may simply not be physically possible. I don't know, but it might be worth it just to kind of do a little digging and just see if...
I would want to have the answers back before I would direct staff to do anything, other than try to get the answers on, if we took 1 meter out, does that effectively do anything? Does that change that? If every house on the street has radio waves emitted from their water meter, would it make a dent in it? Would it make any difference? And I don't know that answer. So I think we can get that answer. I'm sure that it's out there, because I'm sure whoever wrote what he's citing, obviously thinks that there's something that, it could change.
My wife's doctor believes that it would change just to get our house done. Yes, it would.
And again, I'd much rather have that be knowledge that we have from our side as far as what the reality is of that. Some type of study or some type of information from somebody that does this every day, that studies that, or that knows the reality of whatever frequency that radio wave is, and what the difference would be if you took out one from one house. Before we would make any kind of decision or offer anything, or go through the time to rewrite an ordinance to allow something different. Chris?
And then just going off what Gary said, I think the easiest thing to do to start with is just find out if it's even available. Because the water, like Gary said, 99.9% of the time, or 29.99 of the days, the month isn't doing anything. And it also, you could potentially replace it, but it's the electric one that's on all the time. And it sounds like, to his knowledge, it's not available. So maybe that's the first inquiry to do, easiest one to do, and then we could go from there, rather than spending a whole lot of time thinking about ordinances and everything else.
And that's what I would want those answers before I would direct staff to do anything else.
I agree. So just find out if it's even a possibility, I guess.
Yeah, Alderman, I would say that, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Allen, I'm the electric superintendent, and we have reached out to our vendors, and analog meters, the spinning dials are just not manufactured anymore. And with the, essentially nationwide adoption of drive-by radio read meters or smart meters, the manufacturers have just completely transitioned away from making them. So we reached out to one vendor, and he just said, I haven't been asked that question in 10 years about getting an analog meter, because everybody has transitioned to either a drive-by radio read or a smart meter. So and just for clarification, the meters are while they are recording all of the time, they only transmit once per hour, and that's about a quarter-second transaction there. So it's kind of like an iPass.
Is that a radio frequency off the electric meter as well?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So they're both radio frequencies,
That's
just
correct.
different sources.
That's right. Yeah, in the 900 megahertz unlicensed range.
Okay.
So you can take that data point back.
I understand what you're saying, but it's still a pulse. It's still a constant pulse. I know, but we've got to do this exception to our house. We really do. And my wife and I believe it's our civil right to get this done, to live comfortably in our house.
Yeah, I would just say that I don't necessarily disagree with you, because I don't know the science behind it. But to Mr. Allen's point, I do work in the RF space, and 900 megahertz, exactly to Gary's point, they utilize that on purpose so that it permeates everything, and it's almost like an AM signal, right? It goes a lot further and can penetrate a lot more area. So if we can do it, I'm 100% for it, because it's your home and I believe you have the right to do it. I want to remind you of what that 900 megahertz frequency is. So it could be something else too. There's electromagnetic sensitivities and things like that. So.
But one of our friends in California just had one of the spinning analog electric meters reinstalled in their house. They're out there. Those meters are still out there somewhere.
Again, we don't have the answers for you tonight.
Understood.
But we can definitely look into that. We can have our staff look at what possibility would be, and then we can go from there.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
And do you have contact information from him, Kevin, that we can share with you?
Yeah.
Departments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else that has anything for something not on the agenda this evening? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Alderman Beck.
Your Honor, the consent agenda reads as follows. Resolution 2025-11-R, accepting a plat of dedication of part of South Van Buren Street. Resolution 2025-14-R, Esri Enterprise Agreement. Resolution 2025-16-R, IT equipment purchase. Resolution 2025-17-R, IT equipment maintenance renewal. Resolution 2025-10-R, authorizing the execution of a one-year renewable contract for the 2025 to 2029 janitorial services for the City of Batavia facilities with Vega Building Maintenance Incorporated of Romeoville, Illinois. And for approval, the COW executive session minutes for November 26, 2024, setting the price of land for sale and personnel, December 12, 2024, on collective bargaining, and January 14, 2025, on litigation and workers' compensation. I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Motion by Beck, second by Solfa. Any comments, questions, anything? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we move on to item 7, which is Resolution 2025-012R, approval of master agreement for professional services with the Brattle Group Incorporated. Welcome.
Okay, Alderman, I'd like to talk about Resolution 012, 013, and 019, as they're really all related. And they all really stem from City Council's adoption in the early part of 2024 of a new 5-year strategic plan, which included environmental leadership and sustainability as one of its key outcomes. Several strategies were developed or were identified to achieve that outcome, and one of which was the electric utility and studies and plans. And we discussed this with Council a couple of times last year. In fact, it was discussed, the general topic was discussed pretty extensively last spring when legislation was introduced in Springfield, which that legislation is coming back again this year. This past August, kind of following up on all of our discussions that we had with City Council, this past August, we actually issued out a formal RFQ, or request for qualifications. And we did so for really 4 studies. So integrated resource planning, infrastructure resiliency, cost of service, and rate design. And very quickly, I'll run through what those things mean. So integrated resource planning, Steve Allen likes to remind me, in short, it's basically what we need to do to keep the lights on. And it's basically looking at potential. So it's a little bit of an asterisk for Batavia because we already have our resource really through the year 2042. But that doesn't mean that we can't be planning for what's going to happen at that point in time. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be planning in case we find ourselves in a position, where our load changes and we need to go out for resources. So integrated resource planning is examining really what the community, what your utilities desires are from a like values standpoint, but then also examining future market conditions, also examining finances, examining availability of generation resources. You take many different pieces and form them all into a plan, which says that, in this year, you're going to go out and get so much wind power. Likely in 7 years after that, you're going to have to go out and get so much of natural gas power. By then, this contract's going to roll off and you're going to need new power for that. It's a long-term roadmap for your generation portfolio, which if we had a balanced portfolio, we'd be doing IRP for the last, 15, 20 years, but obviously we don't have a balanced portfolio. So that's something that we haven't done. Literally, the city hasn't done an integrated resource plan since the early 2000s when they made the decision to get into Prairie State. That's the last time they did one. So the IRP is the longest probably explanation, because that one may be something that people don't have as much understanding of. Infrastructure resiliency is just like its name sounds. They're going to study our infrastructure, our electric infrastructure, and what steps we can take to improve resiliency. And then that'll fold hand in hand into the capital improvement program. Cost of service study and rate design, again, those two things go hand in hand. Cost of service study, as its name implies, is what does it cost the utility to provide service to company XYZ or to resident Smith? And you look at the cost of service. What does it cost to provide you with service? We are a nonprofit. So our model is to do cost recovery. And then once you know what the costs, you then design rates accordingly. And so that might mean, changing certain fees. That might be raising some people's rates, lowering some people's rates, all based on what we determine the cost is to serve those customers. All four of those studies go hand in hand with each other. They all kind of complement each other. They all require pieces that are common. And so doing all four studies at one time really makes a lot of sense. As I indicated earlier, it's been 20 years since we did a resource plan. It's been 10 plus years since we did the cost of service rate design study. And although we do a capital plan every single year, it has never been done in the context of resiliency. So that's a good component as well. So we sent out this RFQ. We actually sent it to 7 different firms, ranging from small firms to worldwide firms. I kind of gave you a summary in here, a one-sentence summary of kind of the strongest point from each firm as we went through and reviewed the RFQs. But in the end, after we went through the process, staff has decided to recommend that we move forward with the Brattle Group. The Brattle Group is one of the worldwide firms, global firms that I mentioned. The Brattle Group has been around for decades, sterling reputation in the industry. We, the city of Batavia, back in the early part of Prairie State, had utilized the Brattle Group's services through NIMPA. NIMPA actually contracted with the Brattle Group, but they were working on behalf of the city of Batavia to do the sale of Prairie State, which obviously never went forward. But that's the same Brattle Group that we worked with back then. So the first resolution is for a master agreement. As you all know, many of you are familiar, we have master agreements with consultants. Those master agreements set forth the terms and conditions for task orders, and then under that master agreement, we perform task orders to accomplish projects. The master agreement is still in review by both our attorney and Brattle's attorney, but we do anticipate that by the council meeting next week, all legal counsels will be signed off on it. So again, we're recommending to move forward with that resolution with the anticipation that it'll be finalized before council next week. And obviously, if it's not, we will make you aware. And if necessary, we can not go forward at the council level. But there's literally now down to a couple of sentences. So I think we have fairly high confidence. The first task order under the master agreement will be the 4 studies I just spoke of. And work on that task order is going to start immediately in the first quarter here of 2025, and it'll continue through really the second quarter of 2026. So almost 18 months by the time you start to finish of these studies. They are extensive studies involving a lot of work. Then the final resolution tonight is for a budget amendment. As I said earlier, we were still in the RFQ process when the budget went forward, not knowing what to put in for budgetary numbers. We will need a budget amendment in order to cover the costs. I did give you a summary of what we have in the budget, and then what we're going to need now to cover that in a little more detail here in a second, in order to move forward with these studies. I can pause there, and then we can come back to the individual resolutions, and we can walk through those quickly before you take votes on them, and I can give you the financial details. So I'm going to pause there for questions.
Questions? Nick?
I have a question. Obviously, you just explained why while we discussed this a year ago, RFQ went out 5 months ago, why it wasn't included in the 2025 budget. You just explained to that. I'm not comfortable with it, but talk to me about why the results of this is going to take a while, but is this going to affect us when the results come in, or is this planning for 2030, 6 years down? Is there a reason why we shouldn't wait till next year to do this?
Well, very quickly in April, you may be told by the state that you have to do this. This goes to the state telling local governments that they no longer have their own right to control their own utility. So I could see that very well coming in April. That may answer your question. The other answer, really answer to your question though, is that this is not just a simple solution that in the year 2026 we're going to have answers and we're going to be done. This is really planning for the next decade of the utility. And it's going to kind of shape and form the decisions that are made related to the utility for the entire next decade. These types of studies really should be done on a somewhat frequent basis. Do you have to do them every 3 years as is proposed? Personally, I think that that's a little overkill. But should you do an IRP more than once every 20 years? If you have an active portfolio, you certainly are doing an IRP more than every 20 years. In our case, again, we don't have an active portfolio because our portfolio is completely, it is what it is. So I don't know if I answered your question. I would not recommend waiting. You may not be allowed to wait, but I certainly wouldn't recommend waiting. We know we need to raise rates. It's been 10 plus years now since we've raised rates. And if we're going to raise rates, I would recommend we do so in the most educated manner possible, which is what these studies will help you do, is become educated on what your costs of services are and how you should raise rates amongst your various customer classes.
Just, I mean, it for me, so I'll back up and just start with a compliment. You've been running this show and doing a phenomenal job. We haven't had to raise rates while we could have. We could raise rates tomorrow. Does it cost 200 grand for somebody to tell us we should raise it X amount or Y amount? I mean, it seems like it's an art, not a science, that we can raise it 1 year, and if it doesn't work, we raise it another year and save 200 grand. That's my thought process here.
Yeah, and so the last formal cost of service study and the last formal rate study was the science part. And since we did the science part between then and today, we've done some art in between. Okay, we haven't waited to do a cost of service study every single time we've raised rates. We usually have done, again, our last study was more than 10 years ago. We did an actual real study. And then we, at the staff level, took kind of the feeling of what we really know, and we adjusted rates as we went, because we then went through a series of rate increases after that. That then brought us up to 2015. So I don't know that I'm directly answering your question, but I would say, yeah, every once in a while you want to check in and have science, and then you can use art and discretion in the times in between. But you need to reset yourself.
I agree, and I trust you implicitly. I don't want us spending 200 grand so you can tell council, see, I told you we had to raise rates.
No, but like the rate design, let's jump to the rate design piece, okay? We have customers wanting to, purchase new EVs, okay? Or they want to electrify their homes. Or we have businesses who are putting in solar now, right? All of those things, so the solar is going to impact their electric use during the daytime, but it won't impact their electric use during the nighttime. So they may not want that same rate 24 hours anymore. They may want a different type of rate structure that they could take advantage of in combination with their solar. The EV driver, now I've got one, I plug mine in, and I've been waiting for 3+ months for ComEd to get me on time of day rates, but ComEd moves slowly. I want to go on ComEd's time of day rates because I can plug in my EV and charge it overnight. I don't want the same rate that I'm paying at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I want a cheaper rate overnight. But we don't do that in Batavia right now. But that's what the rate design will allow us to do. But we can't just start doing that without kind of knowing cost of service. So that everything kind of stacks on top of each other. More and more customers are asking for those customized rates. They're becoming the industry standard, and having one solid rate, one standard rate, probably for the next 10 years or 15 years, just isn't going to make it anymore.
All makes sense, and I would just throw this out there. I don't know if it's what your thought of. Is it I would feel comfortable myself today saying, yeah, let's do a master agreement. Let's set up for this. Let's see where the government goes. Let's see where the budget goes. I wouldn't start immediately until we know we have, I mean, I guess we've had a couple savings in budget expenses that were a lot less than anticipated already. So the money might already be there, but I'd like to know, get there first.
It's an enterprise fund, first of all, remember that. So this is just the electric enterprise fund. It's not to do with the general fund. And we have reserves in the electric enterprise fund that will cover this without the need for a rate increase this year, which will then, timing-wise, work out so that you can look at rates when these studies have been completed. So the timing is going to work out fine, even though you're spending additional reserves up front in order to do the studies.
Yeah.
I completely am aware that you are the area of expertise with this, but to me, it feels a little premature to do this before we know what the state is going to ask for or what the state's going to put out or want for communities. So what is the benefit of doing it in advance of knowing what the state's expectations are going to be?
Well, so the state is focusing on, it's not even the state, it's the activists who are pushing the lobbying to push the legislation through the state. They're focusing on IRPs. They're using IRPs as a mean, again, it's the Trojan horse. We talked about this last year. There's an agenda that they have, and they're couching that agenda under the guise of transparency and the fact that utilities need to plan. Because, you know, it was a lack of planning that got us into this gosh darn prairie state, which I really won't argue that point because the people back then did a lousy job. But that's what they want. They want IRPs, okay? That's the focus that they're doing. They don't care about cost of service studies, rate studies, resiliency. None of that's on their radar. The legislation that is going to be proposed again this spring, it reads almost word for word as it did last spring. So we already know all the criteria for the IRP. The criteria is already all set. And if they change one or two pieces of that criteria, that's something we can address with Brattle later on. But 95, 99% of that criteria is already known to us.
Yep, I don't know if it's necessarily a question or a comment. If we believe the state's going to pass that legislation, demand for these kind of services is going up. And I imagine it would become more expensive. So it might
the state of Illinois won't, because you have 50 utilities in the state of Illinois that are municipals. We're not going to drive the marketplace for IRPs across the nation.
the requirement of the state isn't going to require all those 50 to get into an agreement.
Well, 30 some odd of them are under the IMEA, so they'll all be done by one agency.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, that, you know, adding a half dozen or a dozen more utilities that are going to do an IRP in the next couple of years isn't going to change the marketplace across, you know,
Okay,
the United States.
so let me ask the question then. It's not necessarily, the urgency of doing it isn't driven by the fact that there's going to be a bunch of different people, different groups needing this done. We're getting out ahead of it.
Yeah, and remind you, I guess how I started this is this was a strategic initiative from City Council. We aren't just doing this on our own. This came from City Council.
Yeah, I recall that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I support it. I just wish we budgeted it.
Well, but had we budgeted, and this goes back, you guys will hear this tale from staff all the time. Had we budgeted for it, you'd just be seeing $900,000 or $400,000 less in the reserves right now. We'd get the same exact spot. We weren't going to propose a rate increase then anyways.
And I think, you know, my memory goes back to us talking about this and saying we knew the state's going to do something. We weren't sure what they were going to do. We really disagree with the fact you got to do it as often as the state thought they, you know, wanted us to do it, because honestly, by the time we get the study done and we get it back through council and we decide how we're going to handle moving forward, we're going to be to that end of that 3-year cycle, or beyond that 3-year cycle, to the point where we have to realize we're going to be doing this again, you know, whether it's forced by the state or whether it's something that we as a council or a future council decides is the right thing to do to keep planning into the future. You know, just like we've done with strategic plans and other departments and other things we've done, we need to have, I think, especially in this department, we need to have expertise from the outside. And then we have to vet that out and make sure that we're okay with agreeing with the results that come out of it and how we handle, especially rate structures for different, different businesses, different customers that we have, and having our own utility, we have to make those decisions. And, I guess a lot of it was, I think the state wanted to be part of that. So that way it was more, governmental issued edicts on that, when the reality is 14 of us that sit here are the ones that make the decisions, whether or not the state says yes or no to that. We still run the utility. Mark?
Yeah, I guess a couple things, because I'm reading it as, Nick keeps on saying $200,000, but I'm seeing a budget amendment this year of an extra $400,000, correct?
That's correct. So $400,000 would be the budget amendment for 2025, and then anticipated in 2026 would be an additional $200,000. And then just for everyone who's watching this, we already have in the budget right now $300,000.
Are the prices that they've given, are those only hold true if we do all 4 studies? Do we really need to do all 4 studies? And if we said, hey, we're just going to do these 2 or do the IRP right now, because that's what we have, we can cover that under budget, does that price go up? Because then we say, well, we're not committing to all 4 of these projects.
We didn't ask that question because we were directed kind of through the strategic plan to do these studies. So,
well, I don't know that we knew what studies would need to be done. So you're coming to us with 4 studies, and frankly, we just said we need to look at our
can ask
our
that
electric
question,
utility, because I'm not comfortable with an extra $400,000, even if it is just in reserves. I mean, we all argued this for a long time on total budget amount, and granted that was more general fund related, but I'm just not comfortable with that extra $400,000.
I will say that if we do want to cut studies, given our portfolio and given our contracts with NIMPA, I would say that you'd rather focus on cost of service and rate design and resiliency as opposed to the IRP. Because the IRP is...
But we may be faced with the IRP in April is what you're saying.
You may.
But if we start with a master service agreement, which there's no cost, that's just an agreement.
Correct.
And I agree, maybe the cost of service and rate design, I think that's more along what I was thinking as part of the strategic plan, as well as the infrastructure resiliency. I'd rather do something, because the 400 grand scares me. Just in general, it just seems like, hey, here's a bunch of things we can do. Should we do all of it? So I'd be okay signing the master service agreement, but then kind of waiting to see what we need to do before we do it.
I think the one thing that I think we'll be forced to do
we don't know if we're going to be
is the
forced to do
IRP.
Maybe. We'll see. Who knows?
I think that, the way it went last year, that the reality was they were pretty sure they were going to get it through this spring.
But I guess the other question is, how long are these estimates good for?
Again, we didn't ask that question. Is this a expiring deal? I mean, this isn't like buying a car. These are professional services, so they're going to have yearly rates.
Sure, I'm just saying,
just like a law firm would.
If we get to April and we have to do an IRP, then it's like, okay.
You're still going to work under the 2025 rates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which you don't see going up because of the legislation. I guess I'm phrasing my question earlier in a different way.
Prattle's rates won't go up because of state legislation in Illinois.
Okay.
If I may really quickly, as a bit of background into kind of how we got here is, last year we did a study with the University of Illinois at Chicago Capstone Group, and one of the pieces of data that they had talked about was our rapidly aging infrastructure in this town with regard to the electric utility. We think about when this town was primarily built, a lot of 70s, 80s, 90s. A lot of that equipment is coming up on its expected end of life. So part of this study is understanding, what does our long-term equipment look like? With things changing, with increasing storms, with increasing winds, that also changes the impacts as well. So that's part of what is driving this, is an understanding of how do we keep that infrastructure so that lights stay on, power doesn't go out, because some of these pieces of equipment, I mean, in 2028, we're expecting 104 transformers to be out of their expected life. By 2030, that's 380. And by 2034, 750. And so when you start putting those numbers together of these add up over time and getting a good understanding of that helps us plan for our utility.
Max, I'm going to put you on the spot, and it'll make sense why I'm asking this question in a second. How's the state of Illinois' finances right now?
Don't ask me that.
No, I mean, seriously, I'm asking because it makes sense. I'll ask you in a second. I'll tell you, explain why.
Not great. We know that.
Okay. Because the IRP, just like we saw last spring, the legislation is going to say, you know, that the Illinois Power Agency will perform the IRP for you for free. Great, sounds like a bargain. Except it's not, it's only subject to appropriation, and it's not in the current law, so they haven't budgeted for it yet. So the next time they would budget for it would be the 2026 budget, which at least my sources in Springfield through the lobbyists that we work for is the 2026 budget in Springfield's going to be even worse than where we are today. So I'm not going to count on free IRP funds from the state of Illinois that would utilize a consultant that we don't even know to work on our utility. So I just wanted to head that off because I can envision people standing up here and telling you that, you know, you guys don't have to worry about how much it costs because it's in the legislation that it'll be paid for. I just think you should have all that information before you count too much on the state of Illinois paying for it.
One thing that grabbed my attention under the IRP summary, though, is that they will do scenario analysis to evaluate exposure to key uncertainties. And they talk about incentives for solar and EV proliferation and greenhouse gas emission requirements and other things. Things that we talk about in hypotheticals and anecdotes a lot when we're talking about potential policy, when we're talking about our own incentives, when we're talking about our own things, like what will happen if everybody goes solar? What will happen if we incentivize this? What happens if everybody gets an EV? And we talk big games, but we don't have any data behind it. So I would love to have more information going into those conversations that are going to be driven by the state, that are going to be driven by the other things that we're talking about in this proposal. Why not have everything at our fingertips all at one time? So I'm in support of going with the full suite of things from Brattle.
I have a kind of a question and maybe a comment follow-up on it as well. We're kind of throwing a scary phrase around. Rate increase has kind of come up a couple times, but I also heard in there that this data might provide us the groundwork for more flexible rate 100%. Structures.
Yes.
So I guess my question would be, without this data, can we implement more flexible rate structures? And I guess the comment I'll make is, for me, when I hear flexible rate structure, it means savings for citizens who can exercise those, right? Like people who can adjust their lives to save money can do that. So maybe give me a little bit about how this data would help us implement flexible rate structures and what that might mean for citizens and their rates.
So I tried to explain that a little earlier with my couple of examples. To just straight answer your question, though, we'd be purely guessing if we wanted to try and do a flexible rate structure without any sort of study. I mean, I want to become a time of rate user with ComEd because, again, I'm going to charge my EV overnight, and during the daytime, you know, I'm going to pay the higher rates during the daytime, but I can control my air conditioner and whatnot, and I'm not going to plug in my 32 amp, you know, EV during the daytime. I can control that because it's in my power. Batavia doesn't offer that today. And what would we really charge during the daytime versus what will we charge overnight? I don't know. That's part of what the study will help inform us as to how to do that. Yes, so using my example, can customers take advantage of those programs to save themselves money? That would be exactly what you would want to do. Or the industrial user who's going to install solar on their roof, you know, but and maybe they run 3 shifts, so they're going to definitely get benefit of their solar during the daytime hours, but they're going to look for some sort of benefit during the nighttime hours, which, oh, by the way, loads are down during the nighttime hours, so we can offer you a cheaper electric rate, maybe overnight hours, because the system's down. That's how that could work, but we can't do that really without the data to know how to make it work. We'd just be guessing.
And to look at the infrastructure costs, whether you're going to upgrade it or replacement or whatever we have to do, if we don't have any projections or any idea of, how many solar unit additions are we going to have, how many electric EV charger additions are we going to have, then you really start to just guess at what's happening. And, I think it's really important to try to start to plan for that. There's going to be so much happening in the next 20 years in that field that, this is going to be, again, something we're going to have to do on a regular basis to be able to plan and adapt to whatever those changes are. I mean, real world, probably the best thing would be everybody that buys an EV gets solar panels. And then you don't have to worry about the infrastructure because the solar panels could charge up a battery bank that can charge the car up. But we don't know how that's going to work. And we don't know when that's going to happen.
With Batavia's portfolio, right? So we have a NIMPA contract through, I won't even give you a date because it's the date is nebulous as to when it would end. But the bonds run through the end of 2041. We know that. That's not going to be the end of the contract. But we have 20 years, let's say, of NIMPA contract left, right? That's a fixed cost to the city for all intensive purposes. We are obligated to pay on the bonds. We're obligated to purchase the energy. So for all intents and purposes, that's a fixed cost. And we've talked about this before, that if everyone goes out and gets solar, it's great, but we still have the fixed cost that we have to pay. So that gets you at that fixed cost component in the rates. In Batavia, we may, instead of doing a quantity-based rate increase, we may do some component of it on the fixed cost increase because that's what matches our portfolio. We have this fixed cost here in the Prairie State contract, and so that might be where we want to put some of the rate increases, is to cover that fixed cost, which would allow people then to per what you were getting at, Alderman, allow people, those components that are variable, to be able to take advantage of those variable components. All things that I think were all great ideas to explore, and that's really what these studies will help us to do.
Me to have all the information that we can get as we start to try to plan out those decisions into the future makes more sense. I wish we would have had more people involved with asking those questions and planning that out when we went through the Prairie State discussions, because it was, here, you're going to have no problems with your utility for this period of time because you're going to have all your requirements met. And you won't have to go out and look for anything else. You won't have to hire more staff to try to manage that side of the system. But, it is what it is where it ended up. And, we're trying to do the best things that we can for the utility now and make smarter decisions as we move forward. So I really think that the study side of this, even though it's not all in the budget, whether we do it now or whether we do it later, it's still coming out of the utility. It's still something that we've talked about as a strategic plan item. And I really think this is the right thing to do, to have that information to try to make the best decisions we can moving forward, regardless of what the state decides to, implement, fund, whatever happens with that. We know this is a resource that we need to plan the utility moving forward.
That's just one more quick question. And I'll preface this by saying you're selling me, right? This seems like a good idea. I plan to support it. But we are asking for a budget amendment of $400,000, and we budgeted 300, like double, right? Why were we so far off? Why were we why?
We just threw a placeholder in there for $300,000 for knowing that these studies were going to come forward. We staff level didn't know the magnitude of the cost of what these studies were going to be.
Okay, so it's sort of a function of having not done it for so long. We just didn't know what the market looked like.
I actually used some of the costs came from, like, Geneva just did an IRP. The IRP portion actually wasn't terribly off from what Geneva just paid for theirs. But then we also threw in 3 other studies on top of that. So.
And do you think we're getting any benefit by doing the scale that big for all those studies, or is it just, it is what it is?
And you're paying professionals an hourly rate. Yeah.
And
they're
that's
not-
what they do 24 all the
Yes,
time.
and you can ask attorneys, will attorneys give you an hour break on hourly rate if you hire them more? I'm gonna guess they say no, so.
No. And the cost will probably go up because it's gonna be such a hot ticket item as we move along. So now might be the time for us to lock in our rate.
Costs are not going down in 2026 or in 2027.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, does anybody care to make a recommendation or a motion on 2025-12R, approval of master agreement for professional services with the Brattle Group?
Second.
Chris Rowan, second by, is it Malay? Roll call, please.
Baraza. Aye. Lancy.
Aye.
Beck.
Aye.
Pieper.
Aye.
Malone.
Aye.
Sofa.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron. Lehman. Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer.
Aye.
Surround.
Aye.
Vogelsinger. Aye. It's 14.
Then we move on to item 8, which is Resolution 2025-13R, approval of task order number 1 with the Brattle Group for integrated resource planning, infrastructure resiliency, cost of service, and rate design for the electric utility. Would you like to say anything else, Gary?
Second.
No, okay. So I had a motion from Malay and a second from Ewer, or second from Yazzie. Okay, roll call, please.
Baraza. Aye. Lancy.
Aye.
Beck.
Aye.
Pieper.
Aye.
Malone.
Aye.
Sofa.
Aye.
Wolf. Barron. Lehman. Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer.
No.
Surround.
No.
Vogelsinger.
Aye.
So that's 12-2.
Water City Council with a positive recommendation. We move on to item 9, which is Resolution 2025-19R, approval of budget amendment to facilitate performance of integrated resource planning as well as infrastructure resiliency, cost of service, rate design studies for the electric utility. And that would be in an amount of $400,000 for this year.
So moved.
Second.
Play, second by Yazzie. Roll call, please.
Baraza. Aye. Lancy.
Aye.
Beck. Aye. Pieper.
Aye.
Malone.
Aye.
Sofa.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron. Lehman. Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer.
No.
Surround.
No.
Vogelsinger.
Aye.
So that's 12-2.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to ordinance 2025-009, extension of a 180-day moratorium on the acceptance and processing of certain building and zoning applications for the LI Light Industrial and GI General Industrial properties in the SRS, which is the South River Street Gateway Overlay District. Drew?
Yes, thank you, Alderman Wolf. Yeah, the ordinance before you tonight would be an extension of the moratorium we currently have in place on the South River Street area. That's for certain zoning applications and building permits. And that's so that we don't have those in that area during the study to allow the study to take its course. Since we last had a proposal for the extension of the moratorium, we've had some significant progress with the study that is outlined in the memo, but basically we've had the kickoff with the elected and appointed officials. We've had stakeholder interviews. We've had meetings with property owners in the area, and we had an open house in October. Housing Levine, our consultant, has provided to the city staff their preliminary assessment for the TIF and Business District Improvement District, as well as their existing condition analysis. And their summary of their community outreach memo, which explains kind of what they've heard from the different public outreach efforts. Those were received basically end of December, and staff's returned our comments to them. So we should hopefully be expecting the final documents, fairly soon, which then we'll be posting out on the website and making those available. With the Plan Commission public hearing, staff did propose revising slightly the what would be accepted or not accepted within the moratorium. And the main change would be that if there's a comprehensive plan or zoning map amendment to rezone any of the properties within the moratorium area to a multiple family residential designation or a general commercial designation, that would be accepted provided that the area being proposed is over 3.5 acres and is under single ownership. The idea being behind that is that if there was a significant project in that area, or a larger project of magnitude, that 3.5 acres would be a good standard for that, and that the proposed zoning districts at least would be compatible with some of the feedback we've had so far about expansion of uses in the corridor, and those being probably the most compatible with some of the direction we may be going with that. So we did provide courtesy notices to the property owners that are within the moratorium area. Did have a public hearing, and we've had contact with some owners just asking status and kind of the study, but we did not have any speakers at the public hearing. So the Plan Commission did ultimately recommend approval for the extension. They did have discussion about kind of length of time of the study. We do have updated a schedule that does kind of puts the completion of the study portion around, I believe, late September, October. So we've only moved slightly, and then wrapping up the project with the zoning component in December or January. So we're still pretty much on track as well. So with that, the Plan Commission did recommend approval. So we do recommend approval of the ordinance before you tonight.
Any questions? Have we had any property owners come in and actually ask about, either rezoning or, a layout of anything on any of the properties down there?
Not specifically. Okay. We've had conversations, with some property owners just about, potential uses of sites, but nothing to the point of formal application or something more significant like that.
I just want to make sure that we're not pushing something out that, could happen that would fit what we're envisioning down there. So.
But with the proposed changes, we think that would, if there was a desire for some of that would help accomplish that.
Okay.
Alan?
Your Honor?
I've had several, I'll call them landowners in that area, call and talk to me about this. And I guess the question was, we go ahead and do this with what you're talking about, but if somebody wants to come in and build a project, that still has to come before council here and have an approval, right?
Sure. So with the proposed change, basically we would accept a zoning map application and then related applications. So if they did want to develop a property and rezone it from the present industrial, this change to the moratorium would allow us to do that. Under the previous version of the moratorium, we would not be able to accept, if they were in the light industrial and the South River Street overlay, we would not be able to accept, under the previous version, a design review application, or even if they were looking to rezone the property because of how it was structured. So this would allow an applicant to take a first step of going through entitlements, and then really once they're rezoned, we could accept a building permit because they would no longer be subject to the moratorium.
Yeah, I wanted to just make it publicly clear to everybody here that we're changing kind of the land use there, but for anybody to come in and do something of any magnitude, it's got to come back to the whole process, including a vote by this body to approve it. So we're just not, here it is, go do what you want with it. This is not the answer here tonight. This is just kind of setting the stage for things to happen, maybe in a more progressive manner than they have previously.
Correct, yes. And so, yeah, with this, we would be able to accept that and have that consideration. And again, that's where, we wanted to have some level of parameters on that to make sure that something that's proposed isn't like a small parcel, that it would make more sense to, within the context of the overall study, but it would be more, something of at least a reasonable size to have before the Plan Commission reviewing the findings, and ultimately the City Council makes a recommendation or makes an approval on any change. So, and it would be a voluntary, this is not to facilitate the city taking rezoning action. It's for an applicant to propose to rezone their property and other development.
Questions? Okay. Can I get a motion on ordinance 2025-009, extension of a 180-day moratorium on the acceptance and processing of certain building and zoning applications for LI Light Industrial and GI General Industrial properties in the SRS South River Street Gateway Overlay District?
So moved.
Second.
Play. Roll call, please.
Baraza. Aye. Lancy.
Aye.
Beck. Aye. Pieper. Aye. Malone.
Aye.
Sofa. Aye. Wolf.
Aye.
Barron. Aye. Lehman. Aye. Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer.
Aye.
Surratt. Aye. Vogelsinger. Aye. That's 14.
Thank you. Next up is Resolution 2025-18R, approving a consultant agreement with Trans Systems Corporation to perform Illinois Route 31 Batavia Avenue pedestrian safety improvements and sidewalk gap elimination. Phase 1 preliminary engineering study for an amount not to exceed $77,051. Oh, Rod.
Thank you. So we have been talking about road diet for a while. Seems like most of the road diet has been completed in 2024. The feedback that the engineering staff and city staff has received mostly been positive about the road diet. People seem like that the speed has gone down, the noises have gone down. So pretty positive feedback. So we kind of waited for that to get done, get completed, and then kick off the next phase, which is the downtown area. We omitted from Houston to Elm Street almost. That is the transition area between the two sides. So we want to look into that. Also look at each intersection or the key intersections like Wilson and 31 or Batavia Avenue, and then Main Street, and then Millview, all those intersections. Look at each of the intersection and look or identify what kind of pedestrian safety improvement that we can do. That includes hawk signal or rapid flashing beacon or any other measure that we can take to improve the pedestrian safety in that area. And then this project, if you remember, back in 2022, we applied for ITEP funding. That funding was gonna get utilized for the entire road diet portion of it, but because of circumstances, we utilized our own funding to implement the project last year. So we have some money available, if you wanna say. So we looked at what can we do with that funding. So there is a sidewalk gap between Bernadette and Midway Drive, like a little bit past the Midway. So we said, why not put sidewalk or propose a sidewalk in that portion of Route 31? That way you have a continuous sidewalk all along 31, at least on one side. So we kind of incorporated that in this phase, saying, let's look into that and propose that to IDOT. That's a difficult stretch of sidewalk, I will say. That's why it's not been done so far. But it's a good opportunity for us to propose that to IDOT and push it through their approval process. And if we get it approved, then we'll construct it using the ITEP funding because we have money for that. So we kind of took all that, talked to the consultant, got a proposal from them to move forward with the phase 1 preliminary engineering. I have outlined that we'll get done by March of next year. Our recent experience with IDOT is that they're taking way longer to read reports and give you comments. I'll just give you an example. Main Street, we submitted the PDR back in, I call PDR, it's a project development report, which is the phase 1 report. We submitted back in September. They told us they're not going to even open the files till March of 2025. So that's like 8 months. So I'm optimistic normally, so I'm just saying that we are going to get done by March of next year, but don't hold me to it if we don't get done and don't get the approval. The timeline is March 2026, we get done with the phase one. March 2027, we get done with the phase two, which is the design documents, and then we construct whatever improvements we are going to do, including the sidewalk, rapid flashing beacon, all other improvements in 2027 summer. So by end of 2027, we have all the improvements that we wanted to do on Batavia Avenue. That is the goal.
We're talking about the section of sidewalk that would be between Midway and Bernadette. What about Bernadette North?
We have sidewalk on north side of Bernadette.
Okay, then how about Carlisle North? Is there anything in that section? 'Cause
I believe that's
pretty sure
the-
that's open, or that there isn't any sidewalk there.
There's a short section there between basically the Goslings and the corner of Carlisle. There's no sidewalk.
Yeah.
Just a real small section there.
Right, like a couple of lots that don't have sidewalk in there that actually, to me, looks like a lot simpler terrain to get through. I mean, I think
We'll
that's a
look-
connection. But then again, we also don't have sidewalks on
Yeah, we'll look
Carlisle.
into all that, but this is the longest stretch that
Okay.
we identified that needs to go through IDOT
Okay.
for their approval process.
Jen?
What I'd also love to incorporate in this is also putting in a request again for the speed limits along that entire section.
Speed limit, in a sense, do a speed.
Along all of 31, taking it down to, 30 miles an hour to where it corresponds to our neighbors north of us and our neighbors south of us. I think anytime that we can get in front of IDOT and put that request to them and continue to do that, let them know how important it is. I think that's something that would be important to incorporate along with this as an ask.
So that's something I think today was discussed at the senior staff meeting. IDOT did a traffic or speed study back in end of 2023, and they came back to us saying, based on that study, they did not recommend lowering the speed at that time. But now that we have completed the road diet, we'll ask them again that can you complete a speed study, because now the road diet has been implemented and we believe that the speed has gone down. So can you do another study? So that's something that came out of the senior staff meeting today, and I'll be making the request.
Okay, if you're
see
going to do it
what's
separately, but if you could incorporate it in with this.
You want the 14 of us to sign it?
I mean, typically they have, we offered them to do the speed study, but they do it themselves. So we'll ask them to perform that study again. But if they want us to do it, they're like, we request them and they say, you go ahead and do it. We will be happy to do the study for them or collect the data and give it to them too.
In the past, the mayor has actually signed the letter, the request, yeah.
Your Honor?
As the mayor, I'd like to just make a couple comments here. Number one, we have an outstanding staff that really tries to keep us on focus and connects us well with IDOT, and I don't hear from IDOT that we don't know what we're doing and whatever have you. As most of you have heard today, there came some pronouncements out of Washington about the use of federal money at kind of more or less the state and local level. And that created, I spent about 4 hours today in total on the phone and massive meetings with mayors of the state of Illinois, from Rockford down to Moline to Carbondale, and everybody's hit the panic because there's great fear that all these projects that anybody has out, that if it's got any federal involvement in it, it's going to crash and burn at the door. And so at the end of the day, I hung up from the main calls. Max was on a couple of them with me listening in on what was going on, and I don't know how many hundreds of mayors we had on the call, but this got everybody's attention. And at the end of the day, a few of us decided what we had going here was mass confusion, that nobody really knows what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, who's going to do it, who isn't going to do it, or whatever, and there has to be a lot more communication before we get going on this. But I guess kind of the word to everybody was, if you're going to go any place with your city council or anybody else and have comments on anything that has to do with with a state of Illinois agency or a federal agency, this may be the moment not to go too quickly and too heavily into it because nobody's quite sure what we're hearing from Washington. And there may not be the money at the end of the day to do any of this stuff. So we just got to be cautious on this whole thing. And I'm all for trying to do everything the staff is to do here, but I just would communicate to the city council that you need to be cautious for a little while till we get a better grip on what's really going on here, because there seems to be all kinds of insinuations and ideas and thoughts, and nobody really knows quite what's going on. And I heard on some conversations with the feds today that you people need to write this up and straighten this out so everybody really understands what we're talking about here, because all kinds of cities were thinking, geez, my great project just crashed and burned right here, right now, and we're not going to get it done. And some of them our nearby neighbors have some stuff going that's really, and I'm just thankful that we got some stuff, but it's not of the major type that some other towns have going. And it's, we'll see where we go with this whole thing. But it's on the TV, the news tonight at 10 o'clock. I'm sure if you turn it on, you'll hear about it. And it, as I say, the mayor's off the record said what we've created, not we, but what they've created is mass confusion to know who's going where, why, when, and how. So just so you all know what the current situation is.
I'll make a statement. I think we know that our staff will be in communication and on top of anything and everything they can find out on a daily basis, because that I think is about how often it's going to change. And I think they're already in the works is to plan out, look at everything that we have that is affected by that would be affected by any state or federal grants. So that way, those things that we know that are there that are possibly affected, we'll be able to figure out what do we do, what do we don't do, what do we put on hold, what can we do with reserves that we have. When it's planned, it's already in budget and it's already maybe even contracts out there. So that way we're making smart decisions and trying to keep ahead of that, just to figure out, okay, what do we do as plan B when we don't know where that money's coming from. So I think it's really important that we know that our staff will stay on top of that. That's one of the jobs that they've always done a really good, job communicating that stuff with us about. And if and when things are, an issue and we need to get behind, our legislators and get on their case about where that money's coming from or how that's happening, we'll be ready for that and, be supportive of whatever we have to do to make sure that those things happen. And again, our staff has, reached out time and time again to try to get this stuff paid for through other means than just our taxpayers. So it is important that we do cautiously move forward so we don't, have surprises throughout this budget year. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what things actually get paid and what things don't. Because I think there are going to be a lot of political changes over this next year.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far afield here. So just something that would be helpful for me is if at some point down the line, maybe we wait till the dust settles, but to get a presentation or some information on what is our risk exposure to contracting federal funding,
I
we'll
have some
call it.
information I can share during the administrator's report this
Okay,
later
great,
this
thank you.
evening.
And I think that's good that we have that information and that, we can have our communications director get that out to the public through the means we get everything else out. So that way the public is aware of what's going on at our end so that they know that. Okay, now we'll get back to Resolution 2025-18R. Make a motion on that.
So moved.
Motion by Beck, second by Malone. Roll call, please.
Baraza. Lancy.
Aye.
Beck. Pieper. Malone.
Aye.
Solfa. Wolf.
Aye.
Barron. Lehman. Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer. Saron. Vogelsinger.
Aye.
That's 14.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Up next is ordinance 2025-008, establishing Chapter 29, prohibition of kratom, synthetic drugs, synthetic cannabinoids, psychoactive drugs, tetrahydrocannabinol, products, businesses of Title III of the Batavia City Code. Chief, welcome.
Thank you. So staff is seeking approval of a new ordinance focused on prohibiting the sales of multiple forms of unregulated hemp-derived THC products, as well as kratom and other synthetic drugs. State licensed dispensaries are exempt from the restrictions in this ordinance. Some of these products are made through a synthetic process and are possibly already prohibited by existing ordinance. We'll recall in 2011, City Council took similar action to prohibit the sales of synthetic drugs commonly referred to as bath salts, red magic, spice, so on and so forth. There is some overlap between the ordinance presented today and that original ordinance, but there are also more specificities in today's ordinance. So this ordinance addresses today's more prevalent substances with specificity, particularly focusing on THC-based products. This ordinance also seeks to prohibit the sales of kratom, a naturally occurring substance with known psychoactive principles. This ordinance builds on Council's stance on these products in late 2023, whereby Council unanimously signed letters to multiple state reps and senators seeking state-level regulation and/or prohibition of these products. Just a brief history lesson, the hemp-derived THC products became more prevalent following a loophole in the 2018 Farm Bill. These THC products have not been evaluated or approved by the FDA and are known to cause a myriad of psychoactive and intoxicating effects similar to legal cannabis. Some notable effects include impaired coordination and cognitive functioning, anxiety or paranoia, hallucination, changes in brain development, or other health concerns. THC is the psychoactive ingredient located in cannabis. Since 2018, manufacturers have excelled at extracting low levels of THC from hemp and synthesizing it with other chemicals to make it highly potent, unregulated, and untested products. The FDA, DEA, and other federal entities have expressed grave concerns about the proliferation of and lack of regulation related to these products. The DEA considers many of these products to be a Scheduled I controlled substance. These products bring with it a number of other concerns as well. One of those that we have at the police department is enforcement concerns. Determining, is this product hemp-derived? Is it synthesized? How do we test it? Do you trust the labeling on the packaging? A National Institute of Health study found that some companies claiming products were hemp-derived were not. So even though some of the packaging may say that it is and claim that it is, there's the potential that some of those products are actually just what you would find in a regular dispensary. There's also concerns about underage access. These products are marketed and packaged in a way that is appealing to young people. They're not age restricted because there are no regulations on them, so 18 and older could buy them, even though just for simple cannabis and alcohol, or not cannabis, tobacco, cannabis and alcohol, there are age restrictions of 21. There's questionable claims about health benefits. None of those benefits have been verified by the FDA or other government entities. You also see in the packet there are copycat products that are designed to look like well-known food products, but they yet contain THC. Again, that can be something that is desirable or piques interest in young people. There's also contaminant concerns, heavy metals, pesticides. Often these items are not tested for in these products. In 2023, the National Institute of Health conducted a study sampling of available hemp-derived products. Study concluded a significant percentage of companies selling these products did not check for impurities and that the products were inaccurately labeled, such as having incorrect information on the potency of the product being sold. Because of that, the report expressed serious concerns about consumer safety based on those findings. In some cases, THC levels in these unregulated products could exceed that found in legal cannabis dispensaries. With regards to kratom, kratom is a tropical tree native to Southeast Asia. According to the DEA, consumption of its leaves can produce both a stimulant effect in low doses or sedative effects in high doses, can lead to psychotic symptoms and psychological dependence. characterized as a drug and chemical of concern by the DEA. And again, the FDA has not approved kratom for any medical use. We'll refresh everyone's memory in 2021 when there was a fatal car crash on Hart Road, a car that crashed head-on into a school bus full of children leaving the middle school. Subject involved in that crash tested positive for multiple substances, one of them being kratom. There are distinct differences between licensed dispensaries and the products available at many of these shops. The products and dispensaries, as you recently heard, are tightly regulated. There's state oversight. The products are all from Illinois. There's state monitored regulations to include state monitored video surveillance systems. They have enhanced security protocols. Products are housed in a safe. They have on-site security and enhanced ID verification. Many of those, if not all of those regulations are missing from the smoke and vape shops and other places selling products of this nature. So why now? Why are we presenting this ordinance now? This topic's been regularly discussed and an area of concern for many years. Cities watched multiple other municipalities successfully pass ordinances prohibiting the sales of these products. The city was patiently waiting for state action or federal action on this issue. Just this year, during the lame duck session, there was a significant push for regulation of these products at the state level. Governor Pritzker had expressed his support prohibiting the sales of these untested or unregulated products. The most recent push ultimately failed in the lame duck session because it was not called for a vote. Despite reports, there was an overwhelming majority of legislators prepared to vote in favor. In other states, it's kind of a mixed bag with regards to whether or not these products are legal. 22 states either prohibit the products altogether or require the products to be dispensed in state licensed dispensaries. There's 7 states where these products are regulated, so there are age control restrictions in place, product types or dosages that are regulated. And then 21 states, Illinois being one, they are unregulated products. Lastly, I also want to acknowledge, I think there's a number of people here in opposition to this ordinance. I have received today quite a bit of communication. I think the city council's probably received the same communication regarding emails from residents voicing concerns over the ordinance. I do want to say about 3 weeks ago, the city did send out letters to the businesses that we identified as being affected by this ordinance to make them aware of the potential passage of this ordinance. It's come to my attention that there may have been a business or two that I did not send letters out to. That was accidental, not intentional. We did have every intent to notify the businesses so that they would have an opportunity to voice opposition if they had any. Now take any questions.
Questions, Chief, on this?
Just so everybody knows, the list of the businesses that this would affect, like you said, there was, I think the memo said 8.
So I am now aware of 9. The most recent one that I was not originally aware of is Urban Apothecary. The other businesses, there is a business called Drip Drop Smokes out in the Randall Road corridor. Alda Smokes, again, at Randall Road corridor. Smoke and Toke, R&S Liquors, Smoke and Liquor, Batavia Smoke and Liquor. There is the gas station at Fabian and Route 25. There's Liquor and Tobacco. And then there is the Shell gas station at 108 North Batavia are the businesses that we are aware of selling these products. This kind of speaks to some of the other concerns I expressed about enforcement of this is these businesses, a lot of them are gas stations or liquor stores. They don't have to notify the city, provide any information that they're selling these products, that they have them on hand. The only way that we are able to identify businesses that are actually selling these products is based on our going out into the field and trying to identify where these products are. So outside of that, we don't get that information.
And these are businesses that sell like CBD type products and everything like that. Is that correct?
So it depends on the business. A lot of these are selling, extremely potent Delta 8, Delta 9 variants. So it's all hemp derived, or the packaging claims it to be hemp derived. It's all hemp derived THC, but again, they're extracting those low levels of THC out of hemp, synthesizing them with other chemicals, making an extremely potent THC that has an intoxicating effect similar to traditional cannabis. Go ahead.
I do believe that there's a couple other businesses in Batavia that do sell CBD type products in there. And, you know, just because with some of what has evolved in the last day or so, I can say that I'm not comfortable with moving forward with either approving or not approving ordinance of 2025 008. I would like to see a little bit more of a conversation go on, because there is a business here in Batavia that's very successful that I think is different than probably the other 8 businesses that are on that list. And I would like to see if maybe there's some sort of, you know, maybe guardrails that maybe we could put to support this business because of the work that they do, or even listen, you know, to some of what they have, because it has been successful in other communities. I have articles that have been sent that I honestly have not had time to read. There's been other communities where links have been sent to me that I would like to review that a little bit more. But then also, I would love to see this more come down from the state level and what we can do to support that, as opposed to really putting these restrictions on. So for me, I don't feel comfortable moving forward with doing a vote until I have more information. I'd like to see a little bit more of a conversation go on where maybe we could not have this whole slew list of items, but do we have some opportunities to maybe do something to help make a really good business successful in our community?
Sure.
I strongly agree with Jennifer. I feel exactly the same way. I would love to get more information before I feel comfortable voting on this.
Okay. And specifically, just, you know, depending on where council goes with this, in terms of more information, I guess, just to give me some guidance in terms of what additional research you would like to see, I'd love to get some additional insights into that.
I would like to see what the main targets are in the places that you're finding. And like Jennifer stated, the businesses, like the one that we heard a lot from, more than possibly the garbage contract in terms of number of emails, how we can ensure that there is, you know, we can support this business and make sure that they're successful and within the parameters that are reasonable for the police department, and, you know, what it is that we are trying to really control. Because I have children and I want to make sure that, you know, we are putting safe things out in the community too.
Yeah, and obviously the goal behind this, and I think kind of the goal of City Council back in 2023 when we signed a letter and sent that to our state representatives is public safety, and looking to ensure that harmful products are not available at places that, you know, may not have the background or information necessary to be distributing and disseminating those products, and then making sure that we're keeping these products out of the hands of our youth. So
I think that's one of the keys that I feel like this, you know, and I kind of hear from you that I don't even know how we're going to enforce this. You know, we don't have the resources available to us to go out and test the products that we might, you know, suspect would be something that's synthesized or bad. There's no way for us to do that. And I don't think that's something that we should be putting on our police department to try to figure out how to do that. I also don't feel like we want to wait and find out that, you know, we didn't do anything and something else happens. You know, we know what can happen with some of these synthesized drugs that, you know, you just don't know what it is or how potent it is. So I think that's one of the things I hope the state can figure out a way to try to decide how they're going to regulate that, because I think that's going to be easier to enforce.
One suggestion would be perhaps to talk to the business owner of Urban apothecary. I know she's an expert in her field and has a lot of knowledge about a lot of this, and she's actually here tonight. We'll get there. We'll get there in a minute, Cheryl.
We will. Let us finish our discussion and.
But I agree, like, that we need to be thinking about the safety of our community and but I also want to be very careful because this is a very well-established small business in our downtown, and we need to do our due diligence with the research and with understanding this topic fully before we impact a business that's been around for a bit now, and not just make a blanket, I think, ordinance at this time.
Mark?
I think Nick was next.
Oh, Nick?
I don't think I was, actually.
I'm trying to get to everybody.
Potato. I'll go. All right. No, I don't support this at all. When it comes to public safety ordinances, you've got my vote 99 out of 100 times. This is that one that I'm against. Just the word prohibition makes me cringe. I find it ironic that, we want to prohibit this for public safety, yet last week we allowed a dispensary. Granted, it's regulated, but we're allowing this stuff, alcohol. I mean, everything's here already. It's in the other towns. We can't control. This is a state issue. It's not our battle to fight, nor are we equipped to fight it. I think you're on the right page, and regulation should happen, not prohibition, regulation. But it has to come from the state level, not us. We're not equipped to do it. And I'm certainly not going to damage potential sales tax and potential businesses in the city until it's properly regulated, not off the cuff prohibition. That's my stance.
Mark?
One of the things you mentioned that by passing this, you'd be able to restrict it and then educate. Well, I think we can educate without passing this specific ordinance. I think that that's something that we should do and work with the school districts as well to have some materials available on our website and stuff like that about, some of the pictures you show are like, it's obviously, some of those things are obviously targeted towards kids, but then you look at other situations like Urban Apothecary, that's not what they're doing. So there's probably a place we can start that is not prohibition, but, gets the word out, because I'm going to tell you 98% of the population doesn't know these dangers exist. So.
And, I don't recall the exact wording of the letter we sent, but it seemed to me that it focused more like the Delta 8, Delta 9 stuff, and really wasn't focusing on, like the CBD oils and CBD gummies and things like that people use for, pain relief on their joints or for, to help them sleep or things in that regard, arthritis. So I think that if there's going to be any further discussion about it, it just might need to be modified more to be, for instance, if the age regulations mentioned as an alternative, that could be something that would be more easily enforceable. And also, I think it needs to be more narrowly tailored instead of being so broad to include all the products that were listed.
As a clarification, like oils and things like that aren't designed for human consumption are not classified in this. This is strictly things that are designed for human consumption and focused on, because of the ability of these manufacturers to extract THC from hemp at such strong potencies at this point, it makes it extremely challenging to, anything. THC is the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis. So to allow it in some cases, but not others, becomes extremely challenging and problematic. So, I understand what the council is saying here. I totally understand and accept that.
It's too all-encompassing, and I understand what you're saying about, It has THC in it, but then I just think that it's not, the way it's drafted, I just don't think it's appropriate at this point in time anyway.
Thank you.
People very eloquently said all the things that I want to say, but yeah, I completely agree. I remember reading the letter and feeling like, oh, that's scary. That stuff sounds like scary stuff. We should support banning it. And looking back and rereading it, feeling like the biggest hypocrite as a daily user of Urban Apothecary products for anxiety. I realized that I signed something that would ban something I use, and I feel terrible about that. But wanted to make that public confession. Now I feel better.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. The letter we wrote was much more narrow. We talked about the Delta 8 products, and I still strongly support prohibiting those specific ones, just as we asked the state to do, and we've heard people say the state should be doing something about it. This one got all of a sudden way broader than what we were talking about before. So that's the problem I have with it. But this idea that, just last week we approved the sale of cannabis in this town. It's highly regulated, highly regulated. We would be hypocrites to let this continue on as we pass something to say, okay, we'll allow this because it's highly regulated. The questions we were asking was what the security was about, what, the concerns of children getting in it, the locations of schools. And here there's another thing that's just, same basic drug. And that's the piece I have a problem with in allowing that to continue. Shame on the state for not addressing it. I don't think the state, don't quote me on this, but the legislation that was being proposed, I don't think it was as broad as what this ordinance is talking about. So I agree with you, Chris. We got to focus on not as big a net in
Just for everybody's info, I've got the letter right here in front of me, and it was two things, 2 bullet points. One was prohibit the sale of Delta 8 products in smoke and vape shops, and the other was raise the minimum age for purchasing and possessing Delta 8 products to 21. So those are the 2 bullets that were in the letter that went downstate. So we were really specific about that, and this is definitely much wider berth. Kevin?
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo a lot of what folks said, specifically what Alderman Millay was saying there. The state's put us in a really tough spot, really tough spot here. Even I was home with some sick kids. I was able to read the 58 emails. Some of them, the American Kratom Association sent us an email with some great resources and information in there. Even they're calling for regulation. They say that kratom can be a useful product if properly regulated, if properly marketed and labeled. The challenge that I think our chief is rightly pointing out, and that Alderman Millay just pointed out as well, is that we're having a lot of stuff out there that's not well marketed, not well labeled, that we lock up at the dispensary, but you walk into, the 7-Eleven, I'll use them because they're not in town anymore, and you just buy, right? So I think the public issue here is pretty evident and clear. I just don't think this is the answer. The unfortunate reality is that I think a lot of this falls on the state. We were given some good suggestions in the litany of emails we got on some smaller steps we can take. An age restriction seems to make a lot of sense, right? 21. Some folks called for sort of self-regulating. City of Batavia doesn't seem practical. We don't have the resources, the time, the money to be doing that. But I would be interested in looking at what other communities have done, what we have done in the absence, what they have done in the absence of state regulation. And then I would encourage anyone listening, even the people who think this is a great product are calling for regulation. We got to put some pressure. We got to write some letters and call some folks to get the state to give us guidance, help us out, make it so that our chief of police isn't the one who has to deal with this. Instead, the state, which is the appropriate place to regulate it, can take action. So for those reasons, I think I have to vote no tonight, but I think you weren't wrong to bring it to us. I just think this is the wrong forum, and I don't think, I think there's some challenges here that are a little above our pay grade.
One thing I didn't think I heard, Chief, is this a preemptive strike, or are we seeing an uptick in underage sales, problems at the schools, whatever it might be, but associated with some of these things? Or is this like, hey, we're watching the environment, we want to get in front of this, whatever?
So we've seen a proliferation of these types of stores in our community, and the stores selling these products. Along with that proliferation comes the concern of underage use and consumption. We have heard anecdotal reports of stores selling to minors in Batavia. We have not been able to substantiate that in full transparency, but I do know of other municipalities that I have spoken to that have passed ordinances prohibiting this or had similar incidents where they've had sales to minors as young as 13 and where they have had crashes or serious adverse reactions to people utilizing and ingesting these substances. So primarily in Batavia, looking to get out in front of what we see as a growing problem.
I think, for the most part, we obviously, we know the sentiment of some of the folks in the public. We have, I think, a general idea here. Gosh, this is when those times when you just wish you could wave the common sense wand over and say, okay, Delta 9, Delta 8, you get to go to the dispensaries. You have to be in where, the high security, high regulated environment, CBD oils and balms and things like that, I know it's more complicated than that, so don't beat me up. But, again, the common sense things from a CBD standpoint, because, gosh, my parents swear by this stuff. And trust me, my parents are the furthest thing from anyone having to do with anything with marijuana. So, it's just, I think, yeah, unfortunately, it's too broad now, but we're on the right path. We know the state needs to do something around this. It's a cops and robbers thing, right? Oh, we're going to make that illegal. Okay, we'll change this molecule. And this, now it's not illegal anymore. So some way, somehow they need to find that out, but to remove the great benefits that people have seen from CBD, that they don't have to be, and I hate to say it, but there's more dangers in mom and dad's, cabinet at home from pharmaceuticals than there are, some of these things. So it gets touchy there, but the Delta 9, Delta 8 stuff is definitely, I wouldn't want any 15-year-old, 16-year-old taking that. It can definitely mess with them. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents. I wish it was simpler, but as it sits, I can't be a yes vote.
Just wanted to point back to those bullet points you brought up. Clearly, those specific products are meant to mimic cannabis. That's the intent of them. That's the loophole that's been formed, and that's the piece that I had the bigger problem with. Things outside of that, that was not part of the discussion. So, putting it all under one umbrella, I don't think is the appropriate approach here. We had a similar thing, as you'll recall. It wasn't too long after we passed video gaming that the sweepstakes machines started showing up. There was a loophole to get around it, and we closed that loophole. We need to do that here too.
Yeah.
I do want to hear from Cheryl in a minute, but is there any way that we can up enforcement with even what's being sold at the vape and tobacco shops for 18-year-olds and younger?
So we do regular tobacco compliance checks. We can look at what our options are for these specific products in terms of doing compliance checks and monitoring for sales to youth as well. That's certainly something that we can consider and we can work into our regular protocols. It'll just be an additional burden on staff in terms of trying to facilitate those additional checks. But
I think it could be a place to start as we're just starting this conversation and seeing what the state does and what we want to do for our town. But that could be, if our concern, a major concern is that it's getting into underage hands, then what can we do to help prevent that? So.
I'm sorry, I meant to ask this question earlier, and I think I know the answer, but from the state level or the municipal level, as of right now, there's no licensing, no oversight sort of whatsoever. In order to sell these products, do you need any sort of license that either we or the state currently has any control over that's particular to these types of products?
no.
No. So there's sort of no licensing, like liquor license, you don't have to have a liquor license to sell this, you don't have to have.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Go get it if you want, but there's no mandate.
Well, I think we should hear from Cheryl. I mean,
Yeah.
she is
Yeah,
ready.
and well, that's a lead into that, because I do know the agriculture department has some licensing, but that's not licensed. The licensing's of a different sort.
I will turn the mic over.
Before we do that,
Sure.
I'd like to limit it to her. I think we've got 60 emails. We know the vote, and we know the vote here. I think the education piece will be great
Right.
for us, so I do want to hear from her, but I don't want to.
And even though we'll
Open.
continue the discussion, I think we should table this item so that way we can get whatever we want. You know, we can email back and forth.
Bring
with-
in other experts to
And
talk.
bring in any other experts that we need to, and also find out from the state where they are. You know, find out from our reps
The same thing we are.
with the state. Well, and I think, you know, it would be nice to know that, hey, they think this next session, they're going to have something that they think they can pass and have some input on it. Have people that are in the industry that would be affected by whatever comes out of the state. And then also not to duplicate or have to, you know, rescind something that we decided that we wanted to pass, that they'll change because their rules will be different. So I think it's probably a good thing, one, that this came up. I will say I'm amazed and kind of interested in how everybody got together immediately today, and we got those 60-plus emails right away, which was, I
Oh my
will
goodness,
say,
there's so many emails.
that's a good thing.
And there's some in your junk mails too.
Yeah, I'm sure
okay.
there are, yeah.
Well, also I want to point out just that, it's the same thing that we've talked about, how you can ban certain things or whatever. I mean, how many times do you see on your social media reels or anything else? I mean, you can order all these gummies online. I mean, so, are we really banning anything? But, that's another point I have here is it's not really going to.
And I think in the end, the main thing we want to do is make sure that it's not something that's available to kids. Regardless of what we can regulate or ban, the biggest thing is to make sure that it's not to youth, that it is an adult that gets to use it.
Yeah, that
if
was
they
my
so choose.
that was my thing. Is like, I mean, some common sense around that in terms of, okay, can we be a zero tolerance town, or and you send in a secret shopper or an undercover officer at one point in time, hey, you sold it underage, boom, done, or 3 strikes you're out, or however, but something around that. We're not going to be able to probably mandate any type of security system or anything like that. You just can't do that, but I'm pretty sure we could be a strike policy or zero tolerance.
Well, and also bring the
underage sales.
merchants in on it too. That the reality is we don't want that to happen. And, we would enjoy their help in preventing that. We want them to allow them to do whatever they want to be able to, be profitable and have a good business and be there for a long time. But we also want them to be, part of the community and to try to not encourage those. And by selling stuff that looks like it belongs in, a Fritos rack on the shelf is kind of tough when you see that. And I'll be honest, I use some of the products that Cheryl makes, and I will tell you, I would not have gotten through what I went through a year and a half ago without it. So, as far as testing goes, it works. Whether you like it or not, it works. Okay, I think we will now take some public comment.
15 minutes.
What? Yep.
15 minutes.
Good evening.
Did everybody see the Forbes article this morning?
Nope.
There's a class action lawsuit against the Illinois cannabis dispensaries because companies are mislabeling the cannabis products on the packages in the dispensaries in Illinois. That's in Forbes today. I didn't really know when I was sitting back here preparing what I was going to say. I flipped up the news just to see did Trump really take away SNAP benefits for families? And I couldn't believe this Forbes article that's talking about it. So I wanted to start out by saying that because the potential for mislabeled products is prevalent throughout inside the closed loop cannabis system in Illinois, as well as outside the system. This is a brand new thing, and we're all just trying to figure out how it's all going to play out. But there's a couple of things that I know. alcohol is the most dangerous drug out there. And yet we have so many bars in this town. And now the bars that are trying to carry some Delta-9 seltzers, which are naturally occurring cannabinoids, so people can have a better choice over alcohol, those are at risk of getting banned too. So it's not just the vape shops, it's not just the synthetic Delta-8s. And the other thing I want to mention before I get started is CBD oil has THC in it. Full spectrum CBD oil has all of the components from the hemp plant. It's one extract from the plant. And that extract has all the components of the plant. If you go in and strip everything out, now you're talking about bleach flour or white sugar or something like that. And as an herbalist, I would never recommend that as a first line for somebody going through cancer, somebody with autoimmune illness. I would never say, here's some stripped out garbage CBD, take that, because everything else you have to go through a dispensary. I'm going to try to stay calm. I have problems with emotional regulation because I've had 7 concussions from playing sports. So please forgive me if I get a little passionate. The hemp industry in the nation is a 28 billion industry nationwide. And here in Illinois, it's an $800 million industry. I'd like to guess the bad actors just make up maybe a very small percent of that. If we look at what's going on in Batavia, I don't know of any child who's bought it, but I am on that side, believe me, believe me. Let me just get going in here. So thank you, City Council, for allowing me to speak today. I was just informed of this yesterday when somebody messaged me privately on Facebook, one of my friends, to say, how is this affecting you? And I'm driving. I'm like, oh my God. So at a stoplight, I pulled it up. And this is 2 weeks ago all over again, except worse. I didn't know it was coming. You can literally see my shop from out this door, just a block away. And I've been in business for 8 years, okay? Back in August of 2023, when you all signed this letter to our senator, August of 2023, was the same month I was here, standing right here, explaining to everybody about my business, asking permission for my signs, explaining what I would be selling inside. And yet all of you signed this and didn't even think of me then. Why? Why didn't you all think of me when Officer, I can't remember your name, when he petitioned this to be spoken about today? I had to rearrange everything on my schedule to get here. I didn't sleep last night. My husband has been completely distraught at how this is going to affect my business because of this poorly written memo that exaggerates a lot. It overly takes these broad strokes that would literally eliminate 90% of the products I sell in my shop. Why? Because THC is in CBD oil. THC is in full spectrum CBD oil, which is one extract from the hemp plant, which has been legal since 2018. All right. My name is Cheryl Cryer, if you don't know. I own Urban Apothecary and Fat Sam's for Pets. By the way, it would eliminate all of my pet care products too. First and foremost, I'm an online seller. That represents about half of my business. I sell to people who purchase my products online and I ship nationwide. I don't sell any synthetics, but I do sell Delta-9, 2 products that are gummies. And if I didn't see so much benefit for my clients, I wouldn't even risk it because it is risky, but I do. The other half of my business is broken up in 2. A quarter of it is in-person sales, people walking into my shop. I'm only open 4 days a week. The other days I'm there making products, working with naturopaths, working with chiropractors, working with physical therapists, working with physicians, working with internists to develop products to help people get off opioids, alcohol, deal with cancer, deal with autoimmune issues, deal with pain issues, including ingestible CBD that contains THC. But because this was written by someone not in industry and not fact found by anybody that has any reputation or any knowledge about CBD at all, they're just grouping everything in together. This is dangerous, not even just for me, not even if my business wasn't here. This is dangerous for the bars that are trying to offer people a better, healthier solution than alcohol. This is dangerous for the many people who have found benefit of full spectrum CBD to help them sleep, to help reduce their inflammation and pain, hopefully to put their cancer in remission. It was more than 58 letters, by the way. I think I counted over 100. These are the ones that I could actually print, and this was less than 12 hours of people supporting me and asking for some type of lenience instead of making a broad swath ban. I started my business about 8 years ago after a personal tragedy that happened in my family that brought up trauma that I thought I had put to bed from my teenage and my 20s. Anyway, it caused what you would call a nervous breakdown. I have an MBA. I worked in a corporate environment. I led global teams in past lives, and I taught business school part-time for about 12 or 13 years. I'm also an athlete. I wrote a book about CBD called CBD for Your Health, Mind, and Spirit, where I'm co-author to a 100-year-old global publishing house. They asked me to tell them what was important about this topic. I also went to Cornell for plant medicine. I took a 9-month certification program, which has allowed me to not only dispense herbs and CBD and hemp, but I can also order blood work for folks. I can do diagnostics. I can treat a person just like a naturopath can, or maybe herbs that you'll see in a chiropractor's office. I can do all that right here. I would never sell to a child. I had a child, I thought it was Susie Ray's kid. I'm like, is Susie your mom? You better get out of here. They're like, no. I'm like, okay, well, you got to get out of here. Anyway, I don't let children in my shop. How are we selling tobacco for the children? How are we doing that? How are we protecting the vape shops and the smoke shops from selling cigarettes to minors? I mean, that's how we would do that to this, right? I mean, that's what we would do. I understand your concerns about synthetic cannabinoids. That is Delta 8. That was created because of a crisis that was happening with the CBD industry during COVID. COVID happened, the whole world shut down, and particularly in Illinois, but a lot of other places, Kentucky, other places, they were left with a surplus of CBD. So what did they do? They converted it in a lab to THC. It's an isomerization process for anybody that's into chemistry. We don't know what that's going to do to people. That isomerization process was used in a drug in the 60s for women who were experiencing nausea. After that, many, many women had birth defects that the government won't even recognize was from this drug. I wrote a blog about this back in 2022 called Say No to Delta 8, and I was screaming. I never would even work with CBD companies, and Nick, I know you know this is true because, do you still work there? No. Okay. I will never work with a CBD company that sells Delta 8. Big companies, MC Nutraceuticals, Kind Labs out of Texas. They call me all the time. Are you still making the Delta 8? Yeah, we are. Don't call me anymore. I've had people in industry tell me that I'm being ridiculous about this. We just don't know enough about Delta 8. Delta 9, on the other hand, we know a lot about. It's the same cannabinoid that's in the dispensary cannabis. We can't do anything about that. It's also in hemp. By the way, hemp is cannabis. Hemp is marijuana. It's the same plant. The government makes us call hemp hemp as long as it's under 0.3%. That way, anything over that amount now can go into the regulated cash cow, which is the closed cannabis system. I used to be in that system when it was medical only. They send with my licensure, which there is hemp licensure. I am licensed by the Department of Agriculture. Every year I have to renew that license. Every year I have to follow strict guidelines on labeling, on providing QR codes and analysis on my products. Any ingestible products you purchase from me, you can scan that QR code. It goes right to the lab results, which includes misotracins, heavy metals, all of that. So yes, I agree we should get rid of the bad actors. I am not one of them. I had the privilege of hosting Maura Hirschauer in my shop last week. She brought her interns, she brought her chief of staff, and she walked in, bless her heart, and I'm like nervous as hell. She walked in and she goes, okay, show me the thing you're talking about. The thing. In her mind, it was, what is that one thing that's problematic? And let me get a look at it. I said, are you kidding me? It's my entire shop. It's my entire shop that this HB 4293, the reason it got turned down is because there was no path for this 800 million in hemp sellers like me. I'm not even talking about the vape shops. I'm talking about people like me who are manufacturing health products for people to feel better. And here's a side note. All the dispensaries around here, Consume, New Era, probably the other one that's coming up in Batavia, they send their sick people to me. I swear to God, go and Consume and tell them you have cancer and see what they do. They're gonna say, you need to go talk to Cheryl. You need to go to Urban Apothecary. Do you know why that is? Because the CBD in dispensaries is terrible. It's terrible. They don't know what they're doing. The cannabis that is in dispensaries is made for high THC, it is made for recreational use, and there is very little education on the people that work there. Now, is that your problem? No, it's not even really my problem, except it is. Because I would never send somebody to a dispensary for CBD, ever. However, I would like to be able to give them just a little bit more THC. I've been an infuser for 8 years. I've been doing this 8 years. All my recipes came out of me. They came out of research, they came out of my education, they came out of what I know about hemp and cannabis. All right. Now I want to talk about non-hemp psychoactive compounds. I was so happy to not see my products on the back of this thing. Oh my God, I was like, honey, pull these pictures up. I can't believe it. Are there anything of mine? Thank God there's not. But one thing that's mentioned, another broad stroke, is psychoactive herbs or psychoactive mushrooms. I wore this shirt today just for y'all. This is the Amanita muscaria mushroom. It is a legal psychoactive mushroom. That's not your job to police that. That's not your job to police that. It's not my job to police that. And just so you know, the Department of Agriculture lists this as a deadly and poisonous mushroom. It's not. People are using this mushroom to help reset their nervous system after years and years of Prozac and sleeping pills and psychotropic prescriptions. And they're using this to reset their nervous system and to hopefully quash the repetitive negative thoughts that come along with complex PTSD. I don't know if you all know this, but I'm also a teacher. I teach locally too. I taught Taurus mental health therapy on Flynn Street. I taught all of their therapists what to look for in THC overdependence. I also taught all their therapists why they would possibly recommend someone to CBD oil or gummies over Prozac, and maybe when they would recommend them. They view me as a valuable resource. I also teach at Sage Healing Collective. Their doctors rely on my products faithfully. Dr. Callie, Dr. Emily Loveland, Dr. Oki Villarreal is a chiropractor in Aurora. There's a physical therapist in Batavia that uses my products. Banning THC would eliminate all of that. All of that. I'd have to shut my doors. Even if you just banned the Delta 9, it's half my revenue. I'd have to shut my doors. I'd have to set up shop out of a Florida address or somewhere else. And then I would just run my online business. I don't want that. I love this community. My husband is 24 years at Fermilab. We live in town. We actually live downtown. And my business is here. I'm not going anywhere. Anyway, back to the psychotropics, back to Amanita muscaria. There's also lotus flower. That is a psychoactive herb. Should we ban that? How about Damiana?
Black cohosh.
How about black cohosh? How about mugwort? These are all very important herbs that as an herbalist, and Laura who works for me as an herbalist, we recommend these products all the time, whether we carry them or not. They're so valuable in a toolkit of herbal wellness. I don't know if you guys know about my journey, but I was on 15 pills a day. I was on medical leave from my job. I was melting down on a daily basis. My husband had no idea how to handle me. We were just married a year at the time. And he didn't know. So I had all this latent PTSD stuff that all suddenly came up. And I was on 15 pills a day and not getting better. Then my hair started falling out. Then I gained a bunch of weight from the meds. And I had a neurologist, a GI doctor, a psychiatrist, a family doctor. I actually had 3 neurologists. I have 2 out of CDH. Anyway, my son said, "Mom, you should try CBD for sleep." And I'm like, "Look, man, I saw what your cannabis lifestyle has done. It may be why we're in this situation right now. I don't know." So anyway, I ended up trying it. I ended up getting the best sleep of my life. And then when I went back to my very lucrative corporate job, I realized that the stress from that and the stress from my personal situation was all part of the problem. And if that I was going to get better, I needed to take a body, mind, and spirit approach to get better. So I went to my psychiatrist and I said, "Hey, I'm getting healthy from CBD. I've gotten 3 great night sleeps in a row. I don't think I need this blood pressure pill anymore. By the way, I have low blood pressure. There's no reason for me to be on a blood pressure pill. I don't need this anymore. I don't think I need this." The therapist literally stood up and said, "You are using this like alcohol. I think we need to up your Prozac." I said, "Are you effing kidding me?" I stood up and left, made an appointment with my family doctor who said, "I'll manage your meds until I can't anymore. You're either going to be off everything and fine, or I'm going to have to refer you back." And mind you, at the time, I was hospitalized at least once a month, probably for 6 months straight, for reoccurring autoimmune flare-ups, gut problems, just stabbing pain. And they wanted to just give me morphine and call the surgeon in. Every time. They give me morphine, call the surgeon. And I'm like, morphine makes me sick. I can't even take that. Shh, 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 shh. Just take the morphine. You'll be fine. So anyway, I have been medication-free for, I don't even know now, 6 years. And it's not because of CBD. CBD is a part of it, but it's part of a holistic lifestyle. I work on sleep. I eliminate all my, foods I shouldn't have. I say no when I should. And I try to take on a lot less stress. So anyway, that's, I know I'm going on and on now. I just want to make sure I hit all the points here.
I was just going to make mention, I think you are definitely going to be on our panel of experts, right? And I think you have most everyone up here support. So I just want you to know that.
I appreciate that. So here's the next step, if you want to be on my panel. Maura Hirschauer and the senator and many state representatives are either going to come to my shop or we are going to get a hall, probably Water Street Studios or somewhere, and we're going to have a town hall meeting. Hopefully the senator can make it. I know Maura's going to make it and invite some of her colleagues. And I would hope that you all would come as well so we can get a proper education on this very, very complex issue. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me, anybody?
Yeah, I just have a couple.
Sure.
First of all, I think there's a big misunderstanding here. And I apologize that you didn't find out about this till later, but clearly the other 8 businesses aren't in the same business you are. And so I apologize for that. And I think that was an
they
oversight.
didn't get an opportunity to speak either.
Well, this is a committee of the whole, so we have an opportunity to hear, and that's, no action is being taken. We only act at a city council meeting.
But had I had notice and had the people have notice, I wouldn't have to, I'm supposed to be teaching somewhere else tonight. That's my point.
I get that,
Okay.
and I apologize.
I'll stop talking
The purpose that this was brought forward, the purpose that we sent the letter for was to address Delta 8. That's what we were looking at, and that's when I saw this come. I thought, okay, failed in the state. We're gonna take a measure here. Didn't know it was this broad of it was that wide of net cast. But in the chief's defense, he was looking at those 8 businesses, which we indicated to him we had issue with ourselves and asked the state to do something. So I think the misunderstanding here is, I would say, I'm not positive about this, but the other 8 businesses that are selling these products are selling it so people can get high. And to mimic mimic what's coming out of the cannabis dispensary. Your business is something totally different, and I think it has. You bring great value to your customers, and I think we need to find a way to protect that. So I appreciate you coming forward and telling us that. To just say this whole thing's got to get thrown out, I don't think that's what we should do either. I do think we need to put the brakes on, table it, as you had mentioned, get more information. I understand, the anxiety this is causing you, and I think we want to protect the service that you're providing to people.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And so I wanted to point that out because your business is clearly different than what I thought we were trying to target.
But this letter from Officer, our Chief of Police,
but the fact that he didn't know
would eliminate me.
Yeah, I understand that. So that's an oversight.
We need to be careful.
So that's an oversight that we're putting the brakes on so we can address that. But the fact that he didn't know that your business also sold that speaks volumes, that it wasn't on his radar.
There's a lot he didn't know, and there's a lot y'all don't know between Delta 8 and Delta 9.
So I'm agreeing with you here, and I'm trying to diffuse this and try to get to the best results.
We have to do lots of research.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're going to have a town hall.
That you're going to set up, we're going to try to be there. I'm sure some of us
Maura
will be
is gonna
there.
set it up. I'm not.
And, it's something that I think, Tony kind of put it right when you talk about a net cast, that, you try to solve one problem, but you affect something else, then that's why we stopped here. And that's why we're at this point. And I think, we need to know that if we're supporting something like this downstate, that does it affect a business like yours?
Yes, it does. I
Because
agree.
I think that, you
understand
know-
what you're saying. I do. And so.
We want to
there's-
support you.
I know you're supporting me. I do appreciate that very, very much, very much. I'm just extremely
I understand.
in hyper right now. But there's a subtext here that no one really wants to talk about, and that's the pressure that Governor Pritzker is putting on the municipalities to take swift and immediate action. And I encourage you to dig a little bit deeper with the Illinois Business Hemp Association, because it's going to uncover the pressure that Governor Pritzker is getting from cannabis lobbyists to keep all of that money in the closed loop system. I'm going to give you a very clear example, okay? I can buy a kilo of cannabinoids. We'll just call it distillate, a kilo in a liter, for about $1,000. In the closed loop system, believe me, because I know, I'm an infuser and I am working a deal with an infusery. It is $9,500. Why? Because of this closed loop system, the people that are in there all get paid all the way around. From the grower, to the transporter, to the tester, to the infuser, to the driver back to the dispensary. Everybody gets paid. That's a problem. And that cannabis closed loop system has gotten cracked wide open 3 times because it was proven to not be equitable for Black and brown and marginalized voices. They had to go back to the drawing board 3 times. It's still corrupt. So yeah.
I was going to say, and the taxes that are derived off of what you sell are completely different than the taxes that are derived off of what's sold at a dispensary.
I love cannabis tax. You know why? It just opened up these living rooms. Have you heard of this? Living rooms? These living rooms are being established in more populated areas. Naperville, Joliet, Chicago has some. These are crisis centers that people either trying to get off drugs, people possibly in a meltdown or a PTSD crisis, they can go there and they're met with a peer review. They're met with somebody else who's been trained and knows how to handle them, because what they're showing is people that are having these breakdowns and they go to the ER, they're getting locked up in a mental hospital. When really all they need is just a little bit of time and understanding and some empathy. And through that, so anyway, the cannabis tax has funded this through these junior colleges. It's a 1-year program. It's 5 courses plus an internship. And now somebody who's in recovery or somebody that's recovering from a mental health, I'm talking substance abuse or whatever, can go work there in these living rooms. And it's really showing to be effective. So I'm not against dispensaries. I love them.
Thank you for coming tonight and talking to us.
You're welcome. Thank you
All
for
right.
listening. I appreciate it.
And Ellen, I just want to say one thing, like, that this whole situation just made me aware of is, like, when we get the agendas on Friday afternoon, when I'm reading through it, to think, who does this impact in our town? Because it is very difficult for any of our departments to think of every single business in town and to really, like, who will this impact and all of that? But we can each individually do that also as we read through this and just think in our circles, in our town, who does this impact? You know, as we represent our residents and our communities and stuff like that. I mean, and we will always miss something because that's just the nature of what it is. But we can try to be better at this.
And I mean, I looked at it and read it and thought, okay, we're going after what's getting sold in a vape shop or a gas station or whatever. That's what I thought. I mean, I use the stuff from there, so it would affect me. And, you know, to get that realization and then to see, you know, the support come out for that as quickly as it did, you know, I think that makes us all realize sometimes we do have to step back, take a look at it again and figure out what is the best solution. Go ahead.
So I will be a lot more brief. I do not have the same specifications or qualifications. That being said, I do have the experience of working in one of the businesses that was described, and that is All the Smokes. And though think we can lay to rest the conversation for now on Delta products, one thing that was not addressed was kratom. And what I can say is that there is a grave distinction being made. It's just simply kratom blanket statement, when there is a degree of types of kratom products. And that is, kratom traditionally was consumed as like a tea or as like a powder, you would eat the leaf. And now they're making extracts, and those same extracts are, if anything needs to be talked to the discussion of kratom, it should definitely be onto the regulation of it, rather than the banning it outright. And the reason for this is because if you use the standard of one fill-free, which is a common tea-like drink, it's 1-to-1, obviously. One fill-free equals one fill-free. That being said, when you compare it to some of the other products that are extracts, it's 17 times the dose of the active compound, which is 7-hydroxymitridine. So I'm sure I see caffeinated beverages in front of all of you. Who wants 17 of those right now in a single sitting? None of you.
Maybe 10.
And who wants them in an instant in a pill? Probably none of you. Those are the types of products that usually appeal to people who have heavy substance use disorders, and it keeps them off of those drugs. That being said, for the average user, who is, by the way, a 30-year-old female, give or take, I mean, depends on the statistic you read, for the average user, they're consuming the tea-like substance. So they're having that 1-for-1 ratio, not the 1-to-17 ratio. And, you have 1 or 2 of those in a day. What's the difference between that and a cup of coffee? What's the difference between that and a cup of classical tea? That being said, we are talking doses that well exceed anything you could possibly hope to find in the natural world. And that is what I think needs regulation, if anything. Not these simple tea-like drinks. We don't regulate tea. We don't have, we have fair trade tea and stuff like that. But we don't have a whole board of, well, in order to be considered tea, it must have this much caffeine, this much L-theanine, all the list of different compounds. The key distinction that I'm making is that for kratom products, if any should be banned, it should be the ones of extreme dose, not ones for pretty common laid-back use of, some people use it for alcohol substitution, get off alcohol by switching. Some people use it as like a coffee themselves. It can have stimulant properties as mentioned. But overall, I would argue that for the regulation of kratom, we should look at it with a higher brow. It shouldn't just be kratom products, period, are banned. It should be intense, if any.
Can we get your name for the record?
Kevin Calderon.
Thank you.
I think this speaks, again, to what we've said before, that sort of as written, the ordinance, I think we're all in agreement, as written, not something we want to back behind. It sounds like we need some granularity in anything we would do. And of course, once again, it sounds like this is a state problem. This is a state issue. Control what we can control, though. Again, both the folks who spoke, it sounds like we want to be granular. We want to think carefully about maybe something different for kratom than it is for Delta 8s, than it is for so on and so forth. So I think just to kind of send the message out to the public, I think we hear you, right? There's great benefits that people are getting, and that we need to be very careful and deliberate in what we're doing.
If I could add to that, because that's a great point, but the public was here and they saw maybe they need a little clarification of the process. This is a committee of the whole meeting. Even if we all agreed to what the chief brought forward, it wouldn't have been passed tonight. Then has to go to a city council meeting. This is where staff, and you heard several topics where they bring something to us, we challenge them and we talk about it, and then we refine it and make improvements where we think we can and challenge it, and then it goes to city council for a final vote and a final opportunity for public to talk. I'm not saying this happened perfectly. There should have been better communication, maybe a better ramp up, so I'm not debating that, but this is part of the process. So I think it worked well tonight, and I think in defense of the chief, he did what he has to do. He brings stuff to the table and says, hey, I have a concern about public safety. What can we do about it? And we discuss it, and hopefully we can get to a resolution that makes everybody happy and the town safer. So go ahead.
Thank you very much for letting us speak. I appreciate it. I just want to touch on Kratom as well. I distribute Kratom throughout basically Illinois, through convenience stores, smoke shops, apothecaries, physical therapists, chiropractors, rehab centers, all across. The Kratom product that I provide is a whole leaf. Okay? And there's a huge difference between whole leaf Kratom and extract Kratom, which you've heard. But really the easiest way to think about it is a poppy seed. Poppy seeds are in your muffins that you eat. Poppy seed is also how you make heroin, if you extract it. Right? That's how it works. So if you extract Kratom, you're causing a chemical change in Kratom, and it becomes addictive, and it becomes very, very bad. If you don't, and you use the whole leaf, it's a very good product. It's been around 2,000 years in Southeast Asia. Okay? So again, too broad of a net. I really appreciate you guys' conversation. I just wanted to point out the differences that Kratom is not anything like a Delta 8 product until you extract it. And then it's just as bad, if not worse. Okay, so more definition is needed. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We get your name for the record, sir?
Sorry about that. Brent King.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Page. I'm a Kratom advocate. I also import Kratom. I make Kratom tea. One thing that he did touch on is the extracts. Unfortunately, with the extracts, there's another product that's called 7-OH. It is a synthetic derivative of Kratom. It has no plant base to it. So it's just done in a lab and put together and marketed as Kratom. It can't be tested. Doesn't show up on a drug test. So the problem with a large amount of what you're seeing, you have another association, which is called the KDA, the Kratom Dangerous, and they put out a lot of information, which you have grieving parents that they take and they say, well, Kratom killed my son. I get that, but you have to have some responsibility as well. I think it's very important that most of my customers are over the age of 50. So it's not really, it's selling to children. I have one lady, her husband, he was the wine guy, and she takes Kratom. She's 70 years old. She has 5 pins in her back, and Kratom helps get her through her day. I have a awarded Marine who was awarded by President Reagan, and he takes Kratom for his PTSD. So it is very useful when people are educated. I don't sell to children. That's the main thing. All right, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Brad Tennis. I'm actually Cheryl Cryer's husband. So I'm actually not
in front of the microphone so that it picks that up.
exactly
Thank
just
you.
like that. So I'm
We'll
not
help
much
you.
of a public speaker, so forgive me if I mispronounce or maybe misspeak a little bit. Also, please keep in mind that I've had maybe a little less than 24 hours to figure all this out because we were one of the folks who weren't quite notified 3 weeks ago. So I'm just trying to really figure everything out here with what was proposed, maybe offer a little criticism, maybe bounce some things off everyone, and just really just try to understand this. I also want to preface this by saying that I've lived in Batavia now, owned a residence here for about 4 years. Pretty much every year, at least once a year so far, I've come here amidst the council in support of a small business that seems to be struggling to get through all of the paperwork or the ordinances or something to deal with this council. And it's getting to the point where it's almost, like I said, a yearly thing. And we're almost living in kind of a, I don't want to say fear, but anxiety over which one of the small businesses, which one of our friends or neighbors that we're going to have to come down here to support next. So I just wanted to get that out of the way and say that. It's not that we don't love Batavia. We love Batavia. We love living here. We love the community. It's everything you'd ever want in a small town. It's great. But it seems to be very difficult for small businesses to get ahead here. I just wanted to say that before I get into anything else. I think everyone is correct that this letter from 2023 is much different than what was proposed for today. But I think that just a flat-out ban on some of these products isn't the answer. I think it's regulation. I admit that we probably do need more regulation, but a lot of the different places that were on that list are already businesses that are age restricted. We're talking about tobacco stores, liquor stores. If they're already going there to age verify who's getting these products anyways, why can't that just be one of the restrictions? Why do we need extra bans or complete, broad spectrum sweeping changes on these? We already have things in place for alcohol and tobacco that are age restricted and limited products. I don't think we need to go back to the wheel on a lot of this. And out of the places that were notified, as I said, most of these are already age-restricted places. This seems to be a very narrow, set of businesses. However, there were some businesses that would be affected by this that I also don't think were notified. Walgreens, Target, Fruitful Yield, Nature's Pathway, Healing Arts, and Jewel Osco. So we didn't notify them. We only notified small local businesses that already have age restrictions in place. I would be more worried about a kid going to Walmart and grabbing something that they shouldn't, rather than R&S Liquors. But I don't understand why certain businesses were singled out. So that's just something I'm curious about. Maybe we can work on, figure out.
I think that's the difference I was talking about before. And I think it's quite indicative that it's only yourself and businesses that are enlightening us to a different side of this whole subject than we didn't see anyone come and speak from the other businesses, those other 8 businesses, which were the obvious ones that we thought we were targeting. And clearly that wasn't the case. So to answer your question, that's why Osco and all those weren't, because that wasn't.
But they would be affected.
I understand that now, and we didn't know that. And so I'm glad we're having this discussion and getting educated, but I think you're, beating a bit of a dead horse here that.
I had a lot of this, like I said, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare.
Yeah,
and
I understand.
A lot of this has already been gone through and answered, which, as I said, I'm not a public speaker, so I was kind of hoping for. The bottom line is I think we can do a lot with regulation. I think a sweeping ban is not ideal for anyone. And I'm really more interested to hear what Moira and the other state officials are going to come out with rather than trying to figure this out locally. So thank you for your time.
Alan, has this been officially tabled, or do we need to take a vote?
No, I figure at the end of this, we'll have somebody make a motion to table it, and then we'll vote on it just for formality at the end of this.
Why don't we make that motion?
We could do that right now then. Nick just made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Cerrone and second by Malay to table ordinance 2025-008.
If I could just say one last thing.
Sure.
Cheryl, I just want to thank you for reaching out to your supporters and really, having them reach out to us. It was very effective. And, there were some that, you could see where they, and it's perfectly fine where they like use the same standard, but there were some that really shared their stories and how you have helped them through that, made suggestions, provided resources, and so thank you for doing that. I think that was very effective. I think it really opened up our eyes. There are other businesses, and you even mentioned, with this ban, we do have to look at the hop water, and the effects, or the hemp water, what that may have on that. So it definitely gave us, a little bit more that we do need to look into. I don't want to see your business hurt because of this, because you provide a service to not only to Batavians, but to other people that are seeking alternatives to the pharmaceuticals. And if somebody decides to go that route, they should have every route and resource to be able to have that, along with our furry animals. Without your product, I think my Jack Russell terrorist would, tear up the house when there's thunderstorms or wind or fireworks or, somebody sneezing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We got a motion and a second. Do
We do.
do a voice vote?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Tabled. Okay. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight and sitting through the rest of the meeting and giving us a lot more to think about. Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to item 13, which is a discussion on standing committees of the committee of the whole. And basically, we're just going to, I think we're going to end up tabling that, because that's something that I think we're going to try to have a discussion about before we get to the election. And then after the election, we will make the decision on how that gets laid out or how we do that into the future.
I think Laura did a nice job of laying it out already with her memo about it. I think it's, it starts with the seniority and you have a choice, but you go down the line. My concern is, I don't know when Keenan resigned, but that spot's been gone and vacant forever. We should have a trigger that anytime something changes, including an election,
right?
We put it on the agenda and say, okay, who's taking over? And I'd like to see some of the discussion go back to the chairs and the vice chairs
and any questions that are under those committee headings, under those departments, that we would go back through who was the chair. If, two people want to get together and talk about that, to, send something back to a department or a question or resources through one of the departments, then that's how we make sure that we'll handle it that way. And also, so when, somebody's not here, they can fill in and they can take care of that, or know that they have that as a duty on the council.
Right. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say, since I've been on council, those positions, other than whoever reads the consent agenda, has not been anything.
Right. And that's something that maybe we do need to talk about, that, since we've gone to committee of the whole, there really isn't that much to do for those titles.
There's not, but we could change that.
Right, and that's something that I'm saying, I'm okay with that.
I don't want to go back to the committees. I like the committee of a whole, but, each agenda item signifies who it's from, and they should be leading the discussion. And
They should know the most. They should be the most expert.
Right.
Well, and I'll take some of the blame for that, because usually if that happens and somebody's not here, I just do it, because I want it done and I want to go home. So,
but it went away after the last election. We never had an organization meeting.
We never went back through it.
The previous election we did, and I remember we went through, and it was by seniority.
Right.
And the most senior chose the committee first, and it was restructured from that. It's the same thing a school board does in the first meeting they have after the election is an organization meeting, and we just didn't do that last time. So we need to get back to doing that and let everyone know what the purpose of it is. It's a replacement of the old committees that used to meet.
Right.
So we didn't have the same discussions twice. The practice we had was each item, it was all the memos we got, you knew what committee it was addressed to. That's who the memo went to, and they would present it. And I think that's a much more effective means that we need to get back to.
Another question that I've always had and never really knew an answer to is if there's 3 people in 2021, there could potentially be, I don't even know how many, there's 10 positions up right now. How is it determined who's got seniority in that particular electoral year? I mean, if there's 3 people in the same year, is it a coin flip?
Yeah, but discussion, I mean, yeah.
I mean,
Nobody's fighting for these.
Right,
Well, yeah,
I'm just saying
if there are 3 new people, then it would be that way, but the seniority would be whoever's remaining.
I still question whether or not we need these committees because a lot of times we've depended on staff to come up and present them.
Maybe we
Really-
change them so that they're more relative to, or relevant.
Right, and that's why I think we need to have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
So we do, if they remain that way, what is actually that position for?
Right, exactly.
And then if they don't remain that way, what do we want to set up as, a hierarchy, I guess is the easiest way to describe it. Mark?
We need to have a hierarchy.
No, we're just going to have you run meetings now.
Just slightly off the topic, but similar, because we have people that are members of boards outside of here. And I just mentioned that because if anybody is interested in the BATV board, since I will not be an elected official come May, talk to me. We can talk about that. I don't know if you did it before, but you're still on it as a citizen.
I'm on as a citizen.
Maybe there should be a list of all the various.
Yeah, we need to talk about just and to be prepared for that because my seat obviously will be available for that, and mine will be a committee, at least vice chair, that'll be available too. So we should have the discussion before. But again, for BATV board, if anybody's interested, just reach out to me and I can tell you about it.
And those boards, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the mayor appoint positions?
For Tri-City Ambulance, TRICOM,
dispatch.
the other things that, Main Street Board representative, those things that.
Sometimes it's very difficult to find any of you who really want to serve.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Right, and that's the other thing I'll say too is if there's something that somebody wants to be involved in like that on a board outside, come and talk to myself, the mayor, Laura, because if you want to do it and you want to be involved in that, that's where you should be. If you want to be, not just get appointed to it because we need to fill a seat.
Well, I think we should have that conversation so we all know, because I do feel like there are only certain people that continuously get, that people go to say, hey, do you want to be on this board, where it could be passed up by other people. So I think there needs to be, that discussion so we know exactly what positions there are, and is this something that is appointed by the mayor, or is this based on seniority?
Right, and also if somebody, like I said, if somebody has interest in it, that's something that we should also talk about is, okay, do we just say every 2 years we need to change? So that way more people get that experience of being on those other boards or knowing what happens with those organizations. I think that's probably important too. That's a discussion we need to have.
Alan,
Abby?
I don't know if it was a matter of a role or chair that he was playing, but Dave Brown used to always give a report too on like historic preservation agenda items or plan commission agenda items. I would love to see the Bike Commission agenda items or the Environmental Commission agenda items or a review of their meetings kind of broadcast as well.
That was one of the things I wanted to bring up as we got through talking about committees, was that we probably need to go back and look at, I'm trying to remember how long ago, we used to have like a mid-year report would come from Plan Commission or from Historic Preservation, or Environmental Commission. So that way we know what's going on with them.
Tree and active transportation have been coming.
Yeah, that's been much more
Or not-
regular.
Environmental and active transportation.
Right,
not
those
tree commission.
those
It'd be great to
haven't,
hear from tree commission.
right, and that's something, again, we need to talk about that and figure, do we want that every 6 months, every 4 months? What do we want? And, how involved do we want to try to get in those, other than just get the information on what's going on with them? Anybody else? Okay, and we move on to project status. From the on-deck circle, here comes Max. Crazy day, right, Max?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I'll keep it quick, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the federal grant situation, all of that. Late last week, myself, Laura, Scott, Anthony, and a couple of other folks met with Chamber and Main Street to continue our conversations about economic development. One of the things that we're going to work on rather expeditiously is some better communications on navigating city processes, and also working on collaboration for cohesive branding. We're also going to work on potentially trying to get out to McHenry. We've heard that they do a lot of really good things with their downtown, so getting some ideas from them that we can implement here. Additionally, I think you all would have received it as well, but one of the things that we're starting to do going forward is that, in recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a lot of communities and cities tend to recognize that as a day of service. And so one of the things we're doing is trying to get that throughout the year. So things like Feed My Starving Children and other types of community engagement events that we can do both as staff but also elected officials. So if there's anything on that list that interests you, please reach out and we'll try to get you involved in that. In good news, a couple of bids did come in under budget, so we're excited about those. We've made some pretty good progress on ViewWorks mobile apps, which was one of the things that we were really trying to get up and running. We're doing some beta testing right now, but we're hoping that if all goes well, we'll be rolling that out more broadly, and that is our asset management system that helps us track basically every asset we have as a city. So roads, bridges, manhole covers, all that fun stuff. IT staff also attended an event where they learned more about getting us ready and getting us set up for Copilot AI, which is through Microsoft. That's something that we're trying to get up and running. You will also be receiving something from the auditors about internal control policies and fraud protection, so keep an eye out for that. As you've surely seen, there was an order passed by the Trump administration to pause all federal grants and loans, prompting significant questions about its impact on municipalities and nonprofits, both here and across the state and around the nation. Staff found out about this late last evening, and we've basically spent the last 24 hours trying to understand what it means, what programs are impacted, and what our exposure is. Thankfully, this afternoon, a federal judge issued a brief administrative stay, delaying implementation of the pause until what I think is at least Monday. That's the last I checked. While this provides some short-term clarity, we are obviously continuing to keep apprised. We were on a call earlier today, Mayor mentioned it, with the governor's office and Deputy Governor Menard, who handles their social service agencies, budget, and all that kind of stuff, transportation, et cetera. During this conversation, the state reported experienced difficulties accessing federal drawdowns, and federal agency staff have reportedly been advised not to discuss the matter with state officials. In response, city staff began compiling a list of potentially affected programs, projects, grants, et cetera. We sent something out to our nonprofit community to try to understand what their impacts may be. So far, I haven't heard much back, but that's something we're keeping an eye on. I do want to share a couple of the projects that may be impacted. Like I said, everything is very fluid at this time. We're not entirely sure. I talked late this afternoon with a representative from Congressman Foster's office, and similarly, they don't know all that much either. They're getting briefed, but that information at times is conflicting. So I'm hoping it's not affected, but we obviously have the $3 million grant for the Batavia Interfaith Food Pantry. We had purchased that building already, and we're currently in the process of trying to get federal reimbursement. We were originally working with someone from HUD's DC office. We were transferred to HUD's Chicago office, and we have now had trouble getting in touch with folks. We've been working with Bill Foster's office for guidance, but like I said, details do remain scarce at this time. State officials have also noted this pause could apply to federal pass-through programs, including the lead service line replacement program and the wastewater treatment plant project. For the wastewater treatment plant project, we had anticipated a drawing down of additional $7.4 million in low-interest loans, which now may be delayed. Additionally, approximately $400,000 in already expended lead service line funds may temporarily be accessible, and $4.1 million in year 3 lead service line replacement loans could also be affected. The city is already on progress on this program. City Council also previously approved $7 million in lead service line replacement loans for year 3, though contracts have not been issued. We're awaiting further clarification as this also may be impacted. Additionally, we are monitoring the status of the $250,000 in Stay for Access School funds, which were set to be awarded for sidewalk construction around Republic, Maple, Webster, and Blaine streets. We also had been slated potentially to receive a $1 million grant for the bike trail around the wastewater treatment plant that we don't have any word on yet. We're obviously trying to find out more, and we'll keep you informed as it becomes available. While this judicial stay obviously provides temporary relief, we're going to continue to keep apprised of the situation and let you know what we know.
That's $22 million. $22 million, okay.
Are you keeping like a list, like on a shared drive that we would be able to access that we could?
We're working on compiling all that info.
Okay.
And so
And understanding that it's fluid, like it could be on there today and off tomorrow. And
we saw a list that I think was 52 pages long of programs that are supposedly on the pause. Like I said, it did not seem that the food pantry grant was on there, but at the same time, the actual language of the executive order or the memo that was sent around, again, we know very little, state officials know very little, and nobody's answering the calls.
They're all signed with a Sharpie, so who knows? I joke about it, but it is going to be very interesting to figure out what's going on. And I think the biggest thing is, to make sure that the public knows that our staff that has to deal with these things every day, every year, is going to stay on top of it and try to make sure that we know as soon as we can what's going to happen with that. Because like the lead service line stuff that's already going, if we don't have the low interest loan through there, we may have to go out and bond out to pay off the work that's getting done. And, instead of paying off the low interest loan through the federal government.
Those are things that staff are trying to figure out and understand as well. So we don't have all the answers, but we're exploring kind of what this all means. Like I said, it's been less than 20, it's actually just a little over 24 hours at this point. But yeah, we were on a call earlier this morning and it was certainly not encouraging.
The further this goes on, the further we need to stay away from Peggy's office. Because she's not going to be fun to deal with if she has to go through and figure out how to pay for everything again. And a different way to pay for it. So thank you for the update. I know it's not the greatest news, but it's reality and that's what we have to deal with.
And if any of you have questions or if you hear from nonprofit organizations or anything, please direct them our way. We're working with the governor's office and other officials to try to keep an eye on anything that may be different than usual. So if you hear anything as alder people, as community members, please get them in touch with us.
as far as like when you talk about nonprofits, like is it more of those that are providing services to residents or just any nonprofit in general?
Anyone who may be relying on federal grants or federal loans.
I can tell you that the foreclosure program out of the Kane County Courthouse, people facing foreclosure are going to have loss of services. The eviction program is federally funded as well, so anybody facing eviction will not have access to the services through the 16th Judicial Circuit. If these funds are continually held up, I can tell you as an example of nonprofits that might be impacted, because those are nonprofit programs.
Anybody have any questions, Max?
Just as you're looking at this, contingency planning, I assume will be part of this. What do we do with a 7 million hole in our sewage plant? Just let it go in the Fox River?
It's still really early. I mean, it's been about 24 hours. We're trying to understand what our exposure could be. Obviously, this will make its way through courts and other bodies. There's already been some relief, it looks like, right now. I know the state of Illinois has filed suit as well, so hopefully it gets clearer from here. And we'll obviously keep you apprised of anything that changes and all that stuff.
24 hours, Max, you set a bad precedent. You're supposed to have all the answers by now.
Congress could fix it with one vote. All they'd have to do is vote. They have 45 days to change it. Any presidential order.
10-day trial period is up.
That's probably impossible. Nearly impossible.
I'm going to try a different one.
Okay, do we have any others? I don't hear any others. Do I have a motion for adjournment?